call, please.
Chairwoman Alvarado. Here. Mr. Banda.
Here.
Mr. Graziano.
Here.
Ms. Guami. Here. Ms. Middleford. Here. Mr. Venero.
Here.
Mr. Zangari. Is not here. Mr. Ghanaian.
Here.
Mr. Di Lorenzo is not here. Mr. Harris.
Here.
Mr. Marinello.
Here.
Everyone will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sunshine notice?
Pursuant to the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this meeting was published in the December 1st, 2022 Belleville Times and November 26th, 2022 Star Ledger.
Communications?
We did receive an email from former member Tom Bowe resigning as a vice board planning board member.
Just for public record, on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank Mr. Vove for his service on this board. And at times the board can be challenging, and he has served this board and community very well. And it's been a pleasure working with him, and we will miss him. Thank you. That's the only comments. Approval of minutes.
None at this time, Chairwoman. Not that it's, we have transcripts.
The bill list dated February 9th, 2023. Did you get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, call the board.
Chairwoman Alvarado.
Yes.
Mr. Banda.
Yes.
Mr. Graziano.
Yes.
Ms. Guami.
Yes.
Ms. Middleford.
Abstain.
And Mr. Venero.
Yes.
And Mr. Ghanaian.
Yes.
We'll do resolutions be memorialized, which is PB 2301 to 27 Washington Avenue. Get a motion on that? Motion?
Second.
Roll call?
Chairwoman Alvarado.
Yes.
Mr. Banda.
Yes.
Mr. Graziano.
Yes.
Ms. Guami.
Yes.
Ms. Middleford.
Yes.
Mr. Venero.
Yes.
Mr. Ghanaian.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to go out of order after the request for adjournment on PB 2006, 450, 452 Washington Avenue. We'll express that adjournment for the next meeting.
Are we settled with that yet?
No, I think they just need to be signed. We're in the process of signing all the paperwork for that Route 7 project, so that's the last thing.
So then they'll be done after that. I mean, do we
Yeah.
need to keep?
That'd be a moot point after that.
Yeah, exactly. What do we, just keep adjourning it?
Yeah, do you think it might be a good idea to adjourn it for, will it be ready, you think, at the next meeting? Or would you
I
be-
hope so. but-
Okay, okay. All right, well, hope's good. Okay.
That's all we can do,
I
right?
hope
That's
a
all
lot of things.
Okay. So the PB 2006 will be adjourned until March 9th. No further notice necessary. Okay?
We're going to skip down to the applications before the board. PB 2302, 145 Newark Avenue. Are you ready?
We're prepared, Madam Chair Lady. Should I go ahead and open?
Florida, yeah.
Madam Chair Lady, members of the board, council's name is Robert Cassione from Cassione Pomaco, 524 Union Avenue in Belleville. I represent the applicant in this matter, Dr. Ashraf Shebab, who is a veterinarian with offices at 145 Newark Avenue. My client is seeking preliminary and final major site plan approval and bulk variance relief in order to construct a second-story addition for him to live in with his wife and child. The Board of Adjustment approved the use in 2017. This use is permitted, therefore we are before the planning board seeking bulk relief and site plan approval. The witnesses you'll hear from are the applicant and potential occupant as a resident, Dr. Shebab, the architect, George Fernandez, and the planner, Bill Stimmel. I'd like to call my first witness, Dr. Shebab.
Doctor, please raise your right hand, please. Please swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and help you God.
Yes, I swear.
If you please state your name and spell it for me, please.
Ashraf Shebab, the first name is Ashraf Shebab, the first name is A as in apple, S as in Sam, H as in Henry, R as round, A as in
I'm sorry,
apple.
wait, get it.
Go slow and louder.
I don't know if that's working. Speak loud.
Turn the switch on. I'd like to let him write it.
Oh.
There you go.
Okay, so first name is Ashraf, A as in apple, S as in Sam, H as in Henry, R as round, A as apple, F as Frank. Last name is Shebab, which is S as in Sam, H as in Henry, E as Edward, H as in Henry, A as apple, B as boy.
Doctor, what is your occupation?
I am a veterinarian,
And what is your business address?
145 Newark Avenue, Belleville, New Jersey, 07119.
Where do you currently reside?
12 Hawthorne Lane North, Newark, New Jersey, 07107.
Are you a tenant in that building?
Yes,
And are you looking to move to your office building and build a structure above that?
yes.
And can you explain to the board, if they grant you this approval, who will live at that location?
Me, myself, my wife, and my stepson.
And your wife, does she have a car?
No, she's a sickly. We have a lot of sickness.
Speak loud.
She's sickly with kidney failure, heart disease, diabetes, photophobic, so she doesn't drive.
And your son, how old is he?
He's 28, about 28.
Does he have his car?
No, he's was born with disability, mentally delayed, so he doesn't have even a driver's license.
So he has no driver's license.
No,
So the only person of the three people who will live there is you who drives.
yes.
I have no further questions of this witness.
Cindy? No?
No.
You can continue.
Can I answer the question?
Sure.
I have a question for you,
Please
this
stand.
document I
Sir.
got, Mr.
Sir, please stand and state your name.
My name is
Yes,
Frank
one.
Felici, I'm the owner of the apartment complex directly across the street from the doctor. And my question is this, has this document, it's more than just applying for a variance to live above your store. You want side, as this says, side loading spaces, minimum parking spaces. Have you been approved for that?
If I could, no, Counselor, you
Can I
can.
just- That's why he's here. That's what he's looking to get approval from this board to be able to do those things. This is the board that would grant those approvals. So, and the way this works, I don't know if you commonly come to these meetings, but when each witness is up, you can ask questions of that witness on their testimony. But any question, any opinion you have on the application, what you think of it, what have you, that would all come at the end. You'd have an opportunity to.
Well, I do have objections, I
Yeah.
will ask questions. You're
That's
saying
fine.
it's at the end?
No, if you have a question on something that the witness has testified to, you can ask that question when they're up there. But what you're asking him now is more of a legal question, and he doesn't have any of those approvals that he's asking for yet. We're the ones who are
Well,
going
I'll
to grant
direct
them
the
to him.
question to you, sir. Has his application for residence been approved already?
No, that's
So
what we're
it's
here
not
for.
here.
Okay,
So each
That's
person come up, you will be able to ask those questions that you have on your mind.
But the reason we're here tonight is to decide whether or not, in part why we're here, is to decide whether or not he can have a residence on top of his veterinary
One
office.
further question, is his residence gonna be the only one in that locale that's gonna have a designated parking space?
You'll,
I don't know, when we
We'll
get
hear
to
that.
that,
We'll answer that too. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Sir, can you spell your last name for me, please?
F-E-L-E-S-E.
Thank you.
Madam Chair Lady, just want to explain something. I had a conversation, obviously not on the record, with the interested neighbor. And there, I believe, is a misunderstanding with regard to this application. I think he thinks we're expanding outward. I explained to him that we have to cite the side yard violations because they're pre-existing, that we're not expanding outward. We definitely are expanding upward, but directly upward, just so everybody understands that.
So the footprint of the current building is going
Does
to be the
not change
same?
one iota.
Okay, so,
And the architect, who is the next witness, will explain that very clearly.
okay, great.
Any questions of my
anyone
applicant?
else have? No. We can move on to your next witness.
Sir, please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and spell your name for the record.
Jorge Fernandez, Fernandez, first name Jorge.
Thank you.
Jorge, where is your office located?
Newark, New Jersey.
The exact address.
75 Parkhurst Street, Newark, New Jersey.
And are you a licensed architect of the state of New Jersey?
Yes, I am.
And from what school did you graduate?
NJIT,
And what degree did you obtain?
a bachelor's in architecture.
And have you testified previously before zoning boards and planning boards?
I have.
And have you testified previously before the Belleville boards?
I have.
And were you accepted as an expert in the field of architecture on each and every occasion?
I was.
We'll accept them.
Thank you. Can you please describe the existing site for the benefit of the board and the interested citizens?
Sure. The existing site is a lot that's 32.5 by 101.09. It has a existing structure, one-story structure, that is 1,518 square feet on the property.
And does your client seek to expand that structure in any way?
He does,
And will that expansion be directly up?
he will.
Is there any expansion of the footprint of this building being sought?
No.
Do you have a rendering where you can show the board what this building will look like should they approve it?
Sure, I would gladly show it. This is your mic over here.
Would you describe, please, the proposed new second floor?
Sure, so what we have here is the existing building on the first floor. It has the entry door for the veterinary clinic, a window opening into the clinic, and the roof that currently exists, a shingle roof, and the sign. What our vertical expansion is on the second floor. It contains the two windows and the gable roof, and it will be a stucco finish on the second floor to match the masonry finish on the first floor.
And can you please describe the proposed interior of the second floor?
Yes, I would like to go to the floor plans, which I also have and were submitted to the board for review. I'll go into my page A1. So what I have here is, on the left-hand side, I have the existing first floor plan.
There's no need to review that, that was previously approved.
It's not going to be changed. And then on the right-hand side, I have the new second floor plan that has a three-bedroom apartment. The entrance for this apartment is gonna be in the rear. We're gonna have to construct a new deck and stairs in the rear of the property. That will give access to that second floor. We have here a entry door in the rear, and then you walk in and you have as you walk in, you have your bedrooms on the left-hand side and kitchen and living spaces on the right-hand side. Like I said, it will be 3 bedrooms, 1 master bedroom with a master bathroom, and then there will be another bedroom in the front with the opening onto Newark Avenue, and there will be another bathroom there for the rest of the apartment.
And again, to repeat, there is no expansion of the first floor, and this second floor is just directly above the existing first floor of the building.
Yes, that is correct. The side yards will remain the same.
Now, did you have an opportunity to review Mr. Di Lorenzo's letter and Mr. Harris's letter?
I did?
And do you have any comments about either of those letters?
No, I believe we can comply with the requirements of the letter.
The requirements set forth in Mr. Harris's letter, you can comply with.
Yes.
And would you explain to the board what that requirement is?
I believe we have to make the sidewalk comply with the Silver Lake streetscape design standards. We'll be happy to oblige.
And how about the back? There's some sidewalk in the back, I think that Mr. Harris might have mentioned.
Yes, in the rear, the sidewalk on the sides of the building is existing. It's an existing concrete sidewalk on the sides of the building. But as you walk past the building, to get from essentially the side to the stairs there, give you access to the second floor, we're going to have to build a small concrete sidewalk that will roughly increase the covered area by 1%.
So the only concrete that's being added is actually just a couple of feet, so
Yes.
that you can go from the existing sidewalk
Yes,
to the stairs.
correct.
And as far as the compliance with the Silver Lake requirements of the sidewalk, probably that's going to wind up reducing the amount of curb or sidewalk in front of the building. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I have no further questions to this witness, Madam Chairman.
I
Yeah,
have-
just as soon
I
as
have
they're
a
done, they
quick
let you in.
question. We'll be right with you. Quick question, is there any other entrance then besides the back?
For
To
the
the
apartment, no.
So it's only one way in and
Only
one way out?
one way in, one way out. That's as per code. Code allows that for a 2-story building.
The fire probably?
Yes.
That's
As long as you have a escape windows in the bedrooms, you're able to have one means of egress.
Madam Chair, Lady, that's come up a number of times in the past, and Mr. Di Lorenzo has indicated that that is code compliant.
And other questions?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you'd be willing to upgrade the sign for the hospital, that's an old box sign, it looks like. Will we be able to meet modern standards?
Yes, that's not a problem.
And the other thing, the
Suggestion, Mr. Bennett.
suggestion,
Yes, suggestions.
I got suggestions.
I know you do, I'm asking what it is.
So, no, just to meet the modern, we have updated signs
Okay.
here, so we might as well bring the whole building up into,
Fine.
today's standards. The other piece, there's the vinyl siding on the side, that's not allowed in the district either, can we move that to hardy board?
Yes, absolutely.
Because it's not preferred, but in this case, I think that's something that he could use down the sides of the building.
Okay.
And the only other thing, the awning is, asphalt?
The existing awning in the front?
existing one, yeah.
Yes.
Is there any way, I don't know about the design features, is there any way we could update to a little bit more of a nicer feature, like a metal kind of? That's my
Yeah,
last,
we
that's
got
my last
this indicating
suggestion.
yes.
Oh, you're talking about the existing awning?
Yes.
Actually, I can do that, but actually after we did that exactly that, I drove around and I seen many buildings renovate or repainted the color, the same exact
No,
style.
not the color, you saw.
No, I'm talking about even the awning, I've seen both because it was like a honeycomb light. We can do whatever it's suggested. I have
We'll
no problem.
replace the awning.
If you come and visit the hospital from inside, everyone said it's at the level of ER. So it is very modern. I don't mind to model anything.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Mr. Hurst, there's a large tree in front of the property. Would they need permission from the township to trim that back? Because I'm sure they will want that trimmed back, because they wouldn't even be able to see the second floor even built up there. It has to be trimmed back or something.
Sure, I mean,
Do they need approval from the town, or they can just,
just to trim it?
yeah, just to trim it back or something?
To remove it, they would, but
To
to
remove
rather
it.
trim it.
Now, there's trees in the backyard that I'm not sure who property they're on. They look like they're literally in the middle of the gate. I don't know if it's their property or if it's the neighbor's property. And I'm sure those trees would have to come down.
I'm not sure, if you look at the plot plan, it showed that there's a chain link fence around it, but that chain link fence is way in on
Yeah.
his property, the
Okay.
doctor's property, not the other,
Okay.
the adjacent property owner. So I would say the trees are on the doctor's property.
Okay. Just wondering.
So you want them removed? Or you saying?
No. I was just asking if they were going to trim the trees in the front, which will have to be done in order to actually be built.
Right.
I was wondering if they needed approval from the town before they just start chopping things down and stuff like that, you know?
Madam Chair Lady, my next witness is a planner/engineer, and I think he's probably very capable of responding to Mr. Guyan's questions
Okay.
about the trees.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to open up to the public. Mr.
Yes.
Your last name? I'm
Sir,
sorry.
I too am a graduate of NJIT. All right, I have a question for you.
Could you,
As
sir,
per this document I got.
Sir? could you please stand and state your name for the record?
Certainly. As per this document I got from Mr. Gassion's office, it says a minimum required indoor amenity spaces. Will that need a variance to expand, contract, rebuild? Has it been rebuilt? Has it been approved by the board to be rebuilt as is? Or do you need an expansion forward for more amenity spaces? Clarify that for me, please.
Well, I believe the amenity space will be the deck that we have in the rear. That could be
Yes,
used
it
as an
doesn't
amenity
mention
space.
in the rear. Usually the amenity spaces is where the clients line up. That's at the front of the building.
Well, we're talking about an apartment, a house.
Usually that amenity space would apply to the apartments in the building. That's for use of the tenants. In this particular case, there's only one apartment, so interior amenity space really wouldn't be required, and there isn't anything on the outside.
For use of the doctor's patients.
No. And he's not even requesting that. So that,
That's
yeah,
fine.
not at all.
Any other questions? Close this portion. Mr. Gassion, next witness.
My next witness is my planner/engineer.
Please raise your right hand, sir. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name for the record.
Sure. William Stimmel, S-T-I-M-M-E-L. My professional address is P.O. Box 280, Rutherford, New Jersey.
Mr. Stimmel, would you review your professional qualifications?
Sure. I'm another graduate of NJIT with a degree in civil engineering. I've been employed in the state of New Jersey for the past 23 years as an engineer and a planner. I've been a licensed engineer since 2004. My license is current. I've been a licensed planner since 2010. My license is current. And I've testified in front of many municipalities in New Jersey, including Belleville Planning and Zoning Boards.
Madam Chair Lady, I'm presenting him just to answer the one question as both an engineer and a planner.
Okay, thank you.
Can you review the existing conditions at this property?
Certainly. The subject property is a rectangular lot with an area of 3,286 square feet. The approximate dimensions are 101 by 32.5. The site is currently developed with a one-story structure. It has a 1,518 square foot footprint being used as a veterinarian's office. The area to the rear of the building is gravel with trees around the perimeter, and there is currently no curb cut or driveway associated with the building.
Can you discuss the trees that were questioned by Mr. Guidance?
Certainly. The trees in the rear area are around the perimeter of the backyard. I don't believe that any of the proposed construction, should this application be approved, would impact those trees. There might be some slight trimming just to clear away branches, but generally speaking, those trees will be protected.
Would you discuss the proposed condition?
Yes, the applicant is proposing to construct a one-story add-a-level addition above the existing building. There is no change to the existing building footprint proposed, as Mr. Gassion and Mr. Fernandez had already mentioned. There's no change to the operation or to the utilization of the space for the existing veterinary clinic. That second floor add-a-level addition is going to be used as one 3-bedroom residential dwelling unit. The intention is for it to be used by the doctor and his family. They're also proposing to construct a deck at the rear of the second floor addition. Some other site improvements include the removal of the shed, which is located on the west side of the building. They're going to comply with the streetscape requirements as requested by Mr. Harretts. In doing so, that will result in a reduction in the impervious coverage in the large right-of-way portion between the property line and the curb along Newark Avenue. The applicant has also agreed to comply through his architect with some of the other comments from the board members, including updating the sign, the use of party board plank siding, upgrading the existing awning on the building.
Can you briefly discuss the surrounding area as it is relevant to this application?
Certainly. The site is located in the BA zone, which is neighborhood retail and mixed use. Lots on both sides of Newark Avenue between the hospital and the border with Bloomfield are all in the BA zone. As you travel north and south off of Newark Avenue, those lots are in the SLR, Silver Lake residential zone. The existing land use pattern along Newark Avenue includes a mix of residential, 1-2 family, as well as multifamily, office and commercial uses, and the majority of the buildings in the vicinity of the site are 2-story, particularly when looking at the commercial and multifamily properties.
Can you review the zoning ordinance and its applicability to this application?
Certainly. There are a number of permitted uses in the BA zone, including retail sales and service, restaurants, bars and taverns, daycare, many others. Also permitted is office, typically on the second or upper floors of a building. The existing veterinarian's office has been approved for the property based on a prior application in front of the zoning board. The zone also allows commercial on the ground floor with residential upstairs, which is what the applicant is proposing here. So the mixed-use nature of this application is permitted in the zone, and that's why this is in front of the planning board tonight.
Can you discuss the C variances involved in this application?
Sure. There are a few C variances associated with the application. The first, which has been discussed already, is the minimum side yard setback, where 10 feet is required, 2.8 feet is existing and proposed to the one side, 3.9 feet is existing and proposed to the other side. The applicant is not proposing to extend the building in any way toward the side property lines. They're simply going up, but because of the fact that you're going up with the building, it's looked at as an extension, let's say, of that existing variance. So the actual dimension between the building and the side lot lines will not change. There's the minimum number of parking spaces required for residential. Based on the requirements of the BA zone for mixed-use development, residential is required to have 1 parking space per unit. We're proposing 1 dwelling unit, 1 parking space is required. The minimum first floor ceiling height and the minimum street frontage glazing are requirements for mixed-use buildings. I think it's a little bit more of a modern look, let's say, than what is existing in the neighborhood and what is proposed for the building. I think the way the architect has designed it makes better utilization of the existing building and provides something that fits in better with the surrounding area. I think if you had a 14-foot wall of glass across the entire front of the property, it really wouldn't be appropriate in this location. And then finally, last, and this was mentioned as well, is the minimum required indoor amenity space. The outdoor amenity space is satisfied by the deck. The indoor amenity space, 10 square feet are required per dwelling unit. You have 1 dwelling unit, so 10 square feet is required. We had the architect's plan in front of you. That plan would be 2 by 3. That would be 6 square feet to give you an idea of what we're talking about. It's a very small area. The size of the unit that's proposed is about 1,500 square feet. The zone allows for units of 550 square feet, so the proposed unit is about 3 times above what's required. The architect has designed a unit, and I believe he is correct, where the indoor amenity space is accommodated within the unit itself. So I don't think, although there is a technical variance there, I think it's been satisfied by the design of the property.
Did you have an opportunity to review the letters of Mr. Di Lorenzo and Mr. Harris?
I did.
And there's been comments made with regard to them. Is there anything further you'd like to add?
I think everything's been addressed. I believe we've agreed to comply with all the requirements for Mr. Harris and Mr. Di Lorenzo. And if there's any questions in that regard, I could certainly speak to them.
Anything further with regard to the negative criteria?
None. I believe that the variance requested can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and will not substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance. The BA zone contemplates this type of mixed use. Even though some of the elements of it may be non-compliant, those largely relate to the existing conditions on the subject property. You're only talking about adding 1 unit over the existing commercial use, so you're going to have a minimal impact to traffic, a minimal impact of parking, and the mass of the building and the design of the building will be in keeping with those in the surrounding area.
No further questions, Madam Chairman.
Is anyone else? Yes, Mr. Venera?
Structurally, will anything have to be done to the existing building to support the second floor?
I would not want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. I don't do structural.
I think the architect might be able to answer that.
No, we'll be able to use this outer walls, the side walls to hold up the second floor and the roof above it.
And obviously that'll be subject to inspection by the construction office, and maybe even Mr. Hurts, I suppose.
Okay.
I just have a question. Is there enough space on the lot for a parking space, or?
It's a little bit misleading. Obviously, at 2 feet and change on the one side and 3 feet and change on the other side, there's not enough room to run a driveway alongside the building. If you look at it from the street, it looks like there's ample space in front of the building to put parking there, but most of that is actually public right-of-way. The property line is only about 5 feet from the front of the building, so you just can't squeeze a car in there.
Okay, thanks.
Where's the 1 space come from?
There's no parking existing, none proposed.
Parking for retail, 1 space proposed, 1. Yeah, I didn't see it on the plan, but I have it written on here. Okay.
No, I almost wondered if at some point the building had allowed parking in front of it, and that's why there was all that concrete there, but it's all public right-of-way, so really, even if it had existed, it shouldn't have.
He has no parking.
Anyone else?
I got a question.
Yes.
One question.
Please stand up.
Sorry, miss, I'm not trying to bother you.
No, that's
I live there, I gotta live with it.
absolutely.
Okay, according to this letter, they're requiring a variance for required loading spaces. Is that gonna be on his property or on the street?
So that relates to the existing veterinary office on the property. There's no change with that. I think Mr. Cassio's office just mentioned it in the notice out of an abundance of caution. There's no change. There's no loading space.
There's no loading space
Correct.
going to be on the street?
No. I mean, if there was a delivery to the veterinary office, they would have the same opportunity to park on the street, but it's
Same
not
opportunity,
dedicated.
yes.
Right.
Understood. And one further question. The required parking spaces, Mr. Gassion's office asked for a minimum required parking space. Now, I have tenants also. They're supposed to park on my premises.
Mhm.
Does he have parking for himself on his premise according to the plan?
There's no parking existing or proposed on the property.
None proposed. Where will it be, on the street?
Right, they'll have to park on the street.
I'll address my objection later.
Anyone else would like to question this witness? Okay, Mr. Gassion?
I have no further witnesses. I can bring my client back up with regards to the parking issue. Obviously, he has 1 vehicle. His wife can't drive, his son can't drive. He has one vehicle, and he will, if necessary, make an arrangement to park off-site based on what I was told by the planner/engineer. There seems to be spaces on the street for one vehicle. I can't testify, but I ride by there all the time too. It's not, you're far enough away from the hospital to allow on-street parking for one car. So, but again, if the board wants my client to make an arrangement for off-site parking, he has that available.
He runs the veterinary clinic now, correct?
He does.
And he doesn't live there now.
He does not.
So every day he takes the car to work.
Has it there.
And
Not
every
changing.
day he goes home, and that's, the only difference is that car is gonna stay overnight.
Overnight. That's correct.
Okay.
That's why I didn't put any testimony in with regard to separate location for a vehicle, because obviously he comes to his office every day. I'm finished with my case. Mr. Frantantoni has? No. Mr. Valisi might have something to say.
Yes,
After
well,
that, I'd like to briefly sum up.
Feet or 3 feet?
Yeah.
Right? It's not big, we like to. And then, yeah.
Does any board member want to say anything? No.
I just got a quick question to the owner, and it's not about the application, but being you're gonna live there, in an emergency, would you be available if someone needed, their dog gets sick or something?
We're always available.
We don't have any pets
We're always
in my
available.
building.
I'm asking him, being he's a veterinarian, he's gonna live on site, in an emergency, your dog is critically ill, will he see the
We
dog?
are available.
Now that he lives
24/7.
there.
Yes.
We are.
Hold on, this is the person who just spoke, I need your name, please stand up if you're gonna speak.
I'm sorry, Danis Tabadella, D-A-N-I-S-E, Tabadella, T-A-B-O-A-D-E-L-A.
She is an employee, the only employee that the doctor has.
Okay.
But the doctor can answer the question, please.
Yes.
Are you available for
Yes.
emergencies?
Yes.
Have you been taking care of emergencies now?
Yes, my fact, I had one of the situation that happened with her and her husband with her dog for an emergency for a heart attack, and I was available even without them.
So you have one of your patients
Yes,
here
I have one.
to testify, more than one, I guess,
Yes,
from the looks of
I
it.
have two, yes.
Okay.
I just think that would be an asset to the community. I don't have a dog, but many people with pets, and having somebody for an emergency available right there that lives there, I think would be.
Madam Chair Lady, do you want the people who've had emergency treatment there to say something there? I didn't even know they were here. You want them, I don't think it's necessary, but if you want them to, be happy.
No.
It's really, I appreciate that they're here, but it really doesn't go to
I
the
agree.
core of the planning
I agree.
issues, so, thank you for coming though.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so, now's the time for the public to make their comments. Is there anyone that would like to make a comment? I know you do, come on. You can come up. Sir? Yes.
All right. Just want to address, my name is Mr. Valisi. I just want to address one issue brought forward by Mr. Yashion, and that's the minimum parking space required. Unfortunately, we recently lost 2 parking spaces at that very same area. One in front of my apartment and one on the side of the vet hospital. That, coupled with alternate side parking enforcement, that's strictly enforced 2 days out of the week. Parking's at a premium. We have 3 side-by-side apartment complexes. Mine, there's a driveway, 2 driveways that separate the next, and on Salter Place, we have another one owned by a doctor, Dr. Eichler. Parking is at a premium. You couldn't get a shoehorn to fit in there to get another car in there. It's unfortunate. I have nothing against the doctor. I'd love to have him as a neighbor. There's no place to park. As a matter of fact, myself, I've been hit, parked right in the front of my property. 40% of my tenants have been struck right in front of that property. Either that or in front of the doctor's office. It's a hazard zone, and kids cross that street every day to go back and forth to catch a school bus, and elderly senior citizens from the 3 complexes, the apartment complexes, walk willy-nilly across the street with their heads down daily. It's only a matter of time, somebody's gonna get hit. And to give up another parking space, I'd love to have the doctor there, but it's unfeasible. As I told Mr. Gassion before, you couldn't use a shoehorn to get somebody else in that area. He mentioned the hospital. Yes, down the road, it's not bad. But nobody has an assigned parking space. That was my point. And the public parking spaces, everybody uses them. Anybody want to ask me a question? Ask.
Yeah, what, you said you lost 2 spaces. What did you lose them to?
I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing.
There's 2
You said you lost 2 spaces?
Yes.
What were they?
One was put a hydrant right in front of my house by the township. That took a spot away. The other one is right next to the doctor's office. They opened the brickwork to the street so 2 cars could park in front of the house, in back of the house. I'm sorry, at Watts, Essing, and Newark Avenue. Take a look, you'll see it. The curbing's been opened.
How long ago was this? Because I've lived there for 8 years around that area, and I don't remember any of this.
You don't? I've been there since 1965.
Okay.
It's been there, that opened the backyard of this person's
I remember that.
house on Watts, Essing, and Newark Avenue, I'd say about a year and a half ago. That time frame.
Now, the fire hydrant. I don't remember the town putting in the fire hydrant.
Want to see it in front of my house?
No, I believe
I'll
you.
take you for a ride.
I believe you.
It's there. It chewed up one of my spaces. So where do my tenants park?
Where I tend to disagree with you, I think when you get more towards the hospital, the parking is worse. And when you go down towards more down the street.
Just the opposite. You know why? They got a convenience store.
I know the convenience store very well.
Midway between. It's always open parking. The condos, the next, on the opposite side, halfway down next to the AmVets, open parking all the time.
Well, we are only talking about one car. It's only one car.
I know, like I said, right now, 2 of my tenants are in front of my house. Where would they go? Where would he? And the other side's already filled up. I'm not giving the board a hard time.
No,
Take a
absolutely.
look.
I know the area myself, and I know how parking is, and each time we do something, the parking gets encroached constantly down, all the way
More
down
and
Mill
more
Street.
and more.
Exactly.
And this document, it's all inclusive. I contacted my attorney also, and she said there's a catch-all. Like the way they word it, if they want future expansion, here it is. I told the planning board,
Yeah, well,
and
there's
you
no-
can't really
can't
claim
expand.
ignorance then.
There's nowhere to expand, the property is small.
That's what I was saying. That's what I told my attorney. But she felt I could handle it, and I can.
And you did
So-
very well.
If you doubt what I just
No,
told
sir,
you,
no, sir. No, no,
please
sure
take a
don't.
look yourself.
Sure don't.
Take a look. I have nothing to hide. That's it.
We can
All
meet,
right,
I'll have
thank
lunch
you.
with you.
Are there any other comments? Mr. Sheldon? Yes.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth and nothing?
I do. Michael Sheldon, 47 Floyd Street. I was on the zoning board in 2017 when Dr. Shebab presented his original application. Just for the record, his application was unanimously, enthusiastically approved, 7-0, myself included. I'm a big friend of animals, of all kinds, all sizes. So as far as I'm concerned, any additional veterinary facilities, any other vets living in Belleville is a huge win for all of us. But I just had one question and comment to make. This is actually a continuation of a question that Mr. Venero asked a few moments ago about the bottom existing building structure being strong enough to support a second floor. And that was already answered. The architect or engineer said, yes, in all likelihood it is. But my comment and question is then, when the construction of the second level is underway, because of my huge concern for the welfare of all animals, will the veterinary facility be closed temporarily If I remember correctly, there is a small infirmary in the bottom floor, 4 or so units. But I'm just concerned that if the facility does stay open while all that construction is underway, it could be detrimental to the welfare of the animals, if any animals are being kept there. Now, this is a question that Dr. Shebab probably will need to answer, but I would just like to be reassured that the necessary precautions will be taken for the welfare of the animals while the initial mind-numbing construction process gets underway. Thank you, that's all I wanted to answer.
I'll ask the doctor, I don't think he boards animals at all. I don't think he
I think
boards
there's a little
animals.
infirmary in the,
There might be an infirmary for a sick animal, but he doesn't board them, he just takes care
well,
of
I
sick
thought I said,
animals.
well, I didn't mean, I meant just an animal.
Okay, let the doc answer.
Yes, hi.
Speak up.
We never kept an animal overnight. That was one of the conditions for the resolution. I don't keep animal overnight because the parking issue. I thank you for your concern, I really appreciate that. But we don't keep animal overnight. Even one of the issue for that, to insulate the wall of the building, and I did insulate it. So when you step outside, even if there's a dog parking inside, you don't hear it outside. So for that concern, we don't. But I spoke with that before even apply to this with the architect. He said, we might need to close for a week or two during a certain stage of the construction. But I thank you for your concern, I really appreciate it, but there's no animal will be kept in this facility for that, Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you. So I, as far as I'm concerned, I overwhelmingly enthusiastically support this. Now that Dr. Shebab is going to be living here in Belleville around the clock, terrific for all of us. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment? Seeing none, I'm closed.
Madam Chair Lady, obviously this is permitted use in a BA zone. So there are bulk issues, but those bulk issues are all pre-existing. We're dealing with one variance, one parking spot. That's what we have. There is some, in my opinion, available street parking, but as it was pointed out by someone, I think it was council, we're not changing the number of vehicles. The doctor is there. He's there during the day. The only difference is that he will be there at night. And he has unfortunate situations involving both his wife and his one child, and there are no other cars going to come from this family. So I think the testimony with regard to C1, a hardship of the property because of the shape of the property, unavailability of access to the rear yard, you can't pull back to the park because you can't get back. C2, the building is going to be more aesthetically pleasing, and it's a compliment to have the doctor living there because he's there available if there's an emergency with regard to any pets in the area. 2 stories also are typical of what's in this area. Very few one-story buildings. So this more attractive structure, changed somewhat by some suggestions from board members, will be a definite improvement to the area. The sign will be changed to make it more pleasant. The greenery in the front, because we're going to get rid of some of the concrete. The trees, which were tested, which Mr. Goins was concerned about, will remain. They may have to be trimmed a little bit. So I think this is really a plus for this property, to have the owner live there, to have a doctor who is the owner be available to take care of emergency situations for pets, and we're not adding anything but one car in the evening. As usual, I thank the board for their attention and their questions to help this case go through or be heard. Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second? Roll call.
Motion to approve, let's make it clear on the record.
Okay. Motion to approve.
With our stipulations and anything from Mr. Hertz, and as presented, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Chairwoman Alvarado.
Yes.
Mr. Banda.
Yes.
Mr. Graziano.
Yes.
Ms. Nettleberg.
Abstain.
Mr. Venero.
Yes.
Mr. Guyan.
Yes.
Hey, approved.
You forgot
What
somebody.
about me? Oh. Ms. Swanman. Yes. Okay, applications. Sorry. You see how it is. I didn't think you were coming today.
She still hasn't accepted the figure.
Take your seat away.
Okay.
All right.
Thank Thank you, Madam Chair, lady, and members of the board. That's fine. Thank you.
Stay away.
Lawrence, did you see it? What curb cut was he talking about?
Go right before 170. Like literally where the Belleville sign is. Right off of in there, they were doing some work in the back, like taking out.
You better buy a real small Fiat or something.
That could, but I knew there was a little shed there. A little shed
Yeah,
there, they
it's,
did some
yeah.
work there to take the process.
But look what they put in, I don't think
Next to that, they put a cutout for a safety viewpoint. They cut out, no, somebody cut out to the driveway and they parked the
I got all the bar shield.
They should have been taking care of it.
Administrators and
The belief was we didn't knock it down.
so they can make that a private parking.
the problem is if you make a shortcut for a single car, you're not doing anything besides, you're losing a spot on the street, the ratio's not increasing. It's not doing anything, that's like taking a handicap spot and blocking it.
All right, if I can have everyone's attention, we're going to ERPB 2304, 254, and 256 Washington Avenue, and 258 Washington.
Yes.
Are you ready?
We are ready. Madam Chair, thank you. For the record, my name is Dean Donatelli. I'm redevelopment counsel for the township. Tonight, this is a public hearing to determine whether the property Madam Chair has referenced, it's commonly known as Old Belleville Hall, the former Old Belleville Hall, and the former Elks building. To determine whether that property is a non-condemnation area in need of redevelopment. In August of 2022, the council directed the preparation of called the preliminary investigation, also known as a blight study, directing the planning board to hold a hearing on that blight study, again, to consider the report, the study, and to make a determination. That report was prepared and circulated to the board. It should be in your packets. It was prepared by Dougherty Planning and Development, LLC. Mr. Alex Dougherty, who is here tonight to provide testimony. He is the township's planner, one of the professional planners. This is a public hearing. It's been noticed in accordance with the local redevelopment and housing law. It's a pretty rigorous publication requirement, so the board's obligated to obviously hear the comments of Mr. Dougherty as well as the public and the board's thoughts as well. So the role of the board is to make a recommendation or a determination whether all or a portion of the property should be declared a non-condemnation area in need of redevelopment. And Mr. Marinello, that would be in the form of a resolution of the planning board to be voted on and ideally adopted at the next planning board meeting and then referred to the council for that recommendation. If there's no questions for me, I know the board has done this before. I'm going to introduce Alex Dougherty, the township's professional planner.
Sir, would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
State your name and and spell your last name, please.
Alexander Dougherty, last name is spelled D-O-U-G-H-E-R-T-Y, Dougherty Planning Development, LLC, 54 Main Street, Chatham, New Jersey. License are current and good standing, BP, AICP, offers education, Master's in City and Regional Planning, concentration in development, redevelopment studies, certification of public policy. If it pleases the board, I put together some slide decks to kind of sum up the study report that you have in front of you, and we'll just kind of walk through that briefly and look it up. Okay, go.
Yes.
It just as a matter of clarification, so there'll be two of these hearings. The first one, as you mentioned, Madam Chair, will be on block 8701, lots 9 and 10, and that's on Washington Avenue, also again known as Old Belleville Hall and former Elks. And we'll talk about the second one when the time comes.
So for tonight, just to kind of sum up the study area you have in front of you, we're here for a study area, an area needed redevelopment, non-condemnation. The address, 254-256 and 258-260 Washington Ave, also known as Block 8701, lots 9 and 10. So this is just as a quick, this is the resolution that authorizes the study. It took place on August 16, 2022. It's also in the report. I'll get it back. Yeah, I lost it. Very fancy wire. Well, back up.
Is that you?
Yeah.
I just switched back there.
Okay, go. That's what we're doing. Everybody's in.
It's just
Look at all
about,
that
there we go.
greenery too, wow. Did you plant things?
Okay, so we'll just go through this here. So this slide right here is just kind of outlining the property in question. As we can see, it consists of 2 tax lots. When we look at the total acreage here, we're at basically about half an acre, 0.5161. And then as you see here, we break down lot 9 is 0.2077, and then lot 10, 0.3084. So for the public's general knowledge in the public realm, we're dealing with the Old Elks Club and the Old Belleville Hall for orientation where we're at on Washington Avenue. This is just a map indicating what zone we're in. We're in your BG commercial residential mixed-use district. And then some general tax information about the properties that we're studying. And then, so we'll kind of get right into the nuts and bolts of this here. Under the local redevelopment housing law, there are, I believe, 7 criteria, and to meet that criteria, only 1 of the 7 have to be met. During my study, I believe when we talk about lot 9, which is the Elks Club, I think we meet 3 of these criteria for local housing redevelopment. Now, out of that 3, we have abandonment, we have obsolete or faulty design, and smart growth. When we go through that, we'll talk about the abandonment, the obsolete and faulty design, and what smart growth means for planning and development of a city. We'll talk about the exterior. It's a little tattered, it's exhausted. We have excessive pavement up front, no visible ADA access, no rural access for parking, and we have an uncovered exterior flight of stairs. The awning, as you can see in this photo, is pretty weathered and tattered. We'll kind of circle around to the back, give you an orientation. From the front on Washington, it looks like it's a 1-story. Obviously, topography great off a valley. The building's a lot larger. As we can kind of see here, we have a retaining wall for that walkway kind of separating there. It's seen better days. It's kind of crumbling. The outside to the rear as well, that curb appeal off of valley, it is also exhausted. What's important to note here is there's very minimal glazing or adequate light. And I think one of the photos here will will kind of show that as we see the rear building on that first floor, it really only has 2 windows. Step further back, taking a look at on Valley, this is what you see from Valley. It's, again, excessive pavement. There really is no hard delineation where the property starts and stops here. I think we have a good idea. Right now, it's kind of been overtaken by our neighbor to park some vehicles there. Again, there's no clear parking stalls or site circulation here. And we'll kind of just do an aerial view of it as you see. Really, you either come in from the front or you come in from the back. The only way to get there is really internal to the building. As we can see here, the building, if you look on the bottom left, it really pinches close to our neighbor there. Also, when I look at that roof, unfortunately, I don't think I can zoom in on this PowerPoint, of that parapet, there's really only one building utility systems up there. If we look real closely in the little jag, if you will, on the top, there is one AC condenser on the side. The building's pretty antiquated. All that internal workings are internal to the site, and I'll kind of show you that from the inside here. First floor, again, you can kind of see those AC systems and ventilation popping down. You know, again, it's a little in disarray. It's been abandoned. We're going on a little over 3 years now since the Elks have been in here. And this is the conditions in. We have that internal flight of stairs that goes from that first floor, really almost 2.5, nearly 3 floors down to that rear entrance. That's the only way to maneuver through the building is a staircase. The building, I guess, suffered a water pipe. It must have broke, but we have the mop bucket here, the water damage on the ceiling. It's seen some better days. As we kind of circulate through that mid-floor here, you know, some of the walls, we have that AC system built into the wall, very antiquated here. It's a little disarray. But this picture here is very interesting. To the left here, we have that portable propane, as you can see, all the piping and what used to be a kitchen here. Very old system in place. And this is the basement. So I took this photo with the flash on. Again, it's very dark, you know, really minimal glazing here. Again, you see that AC system popping out right there, you know, in the basement. And I think what's important to note here about this property is we have, I believe this building is about 75 years old. That's my indications of the tax and history of this building, about 75 years old. It's a pretty old building. I think it's used, outlived its useful life. And as we see, you know, the design 75 years ago on this property, I don't think is really what the city's vision is going forward for another 75 years. With that being said, when we look at this from a planning standpoint, the credible findings based on the field reconnaissance, conditions that are relatively observable and reasonably ascertained in review of the public documents, truly I believe the building has outlived its useful life. The current condition of the property is functionally obsolete. So these are 3 bullets. Again, we hit criteria B because of the ongoing discontinuance of the building that has led to the abandoned vacant of at least minimum of 2 years. We have purpose D here, and again, based on the age, the obsolete layout, antiquated systems, they're really inconsistent with today's design standards and codes, which really makes it costly to renovate. And pretty much when we look at markets and, you know, tenants and selections for businesses, really does make it hard to make this building tenantable and competitive on today's market. And then we have purpose H, which is consistency of smart growth principles to encourage reinvestments and improvements to sites in communities that once there, right? So smart growth, you have your connection, your sewer, utilities, road network, everything is there. It doesn't make sense to clear virgin land, raw land to build something new. And that's essentially what smart growth is, to kind of, you know, put development in communities that have already sustained development. And that's really one of the principles for smart growth. And we'll kind of just jump right into the neighboring lot on lot 10. Again, this is the tax information for the lot. In this particular case, I believe we hit 4 of the redevelopment criteria out of the 7. With that being said, we have a substandard building, abandonment, obsolete, faulty design, and again, smart growth principles. And for this one, for lot 10, this is the old Elks Hall. As you can see, it's a pretty dominating structure, big massing here, and certainly seen its better days. The building is boarded up, abandoned, deteriorating. Again, boarded up, the sidewalk is pretty crumbled up, the doors are chained, the windows are boarded up. It's certainly substandard, if not clearly waiting for collapse, imminent collapse. And I say that because the rear, the exterior, the rear, approximately 2019, there was a removal of an addition that was back here, a part of the structure, due to the soil conditions and structural issues here. Again, giving credit to that criteria A of redevelopment. And this is kind of what's remained. Again, this is in your public realm. It's kind of an unsafe structure as it stands, certainly not good for the public welfare here and safety. What's interesting though is the way the building is now, you know, the roof is busted open, you know, the windows are, half of them are missing, they're boarded up. I think the previous situation here was just get it to where it can stand alone, and then let's talk about what we're going to do with the building. I did take a peek inside the building. It is gutted out. You just have the beams run across to keep the shell of the building open. And with that being said, with that, I believe when we look at the findings here, for credible findings that you find in the report here, we have the substandard conditions due to the general dilapidation and unsafe conditions. Again, we have the abandonment of the building of two years or more, and we have the obsolete layout. Again, this building, as you saw in the photos, we can go back, there was no delineated parking and access of that narrative here in the layout. With that being said, we also have the smart growth principles here. So with that, I'll just kind of conclude on this. Redevelopment designation is a mechanism to reverse the site's continued stagnation. It is financially infeasible to renovate and restore the study area of those two properties and the buildings within to a quality where it can remain competitive with newer commercial and mixed-use buildings in the area without immediate structural repairs and extensive renovation. The overall site poses public safety concerns, and with that being said, the buildings will likely remain vacant without some redevelopment efforts to put these properties back into competitive use. So with that, that's the study area here in just a nutshell. So we'll conclude, we have 3 out of the 7 criteria for Lot 9 and 4 for Lot 10.
Mr. Dougherty,
Yes.
you testified on Lot 9.
Yes.
You have, and in your report, you have the 3 parts of the
Yes.
rehabilitation lots cited, B, D, and H.
Yes.
I think you also,
On Lot 9.
I think you also testified that on Lot 9, you testified as to the dilapidated condition and other things that would have also included category A. Is there a reason why?
Well, as a planner and somebody doing the study, when I see those 2 buildings next to each other, and we say dilapidation, and Lot 10, the larger building, the old Belleville Hall, that's certainly deteriorating, dilapidating. When I look at that one, is it structurally sound? Yeah, I didn't see anything that would say otherwise.
Okay.
So I left that alone.
Right.
I'm not going to reach for something. This is factual, credible findings of the overall property.
So the conditions are deteriorated, but maybe not to the level to reach
Right.
category A of the statute?
Correct.
Okay.
I have questions. A number of years ago, the old Belleville Hall came before us, and it was an exciting plan. I thought they were going to renovate it, keep the existing structure, high ceilings, exposed brick. I'm just wondering what happened between that time and now that we want to demolish it, because
I think what happened was when we realized what it costs to renovate that structure alone and the markets and what's needed to, make that happen, I think the previous owner this is just too big of an issue for me to do alone, and he put it up for sale as is. I just don't want to touch it. I think when you look at redevelopment and that whole obsolete layout, feasibility comes into play. Is it feasible to renovate this? And again, redevelopment designation is a vehicle, a mechanism to kind of help, alleviate that, but at the same time, give the town something that they want to manifest here.
I just think, we're such an old town, and we just keep knocking down our old buildings. It's, to me, like destroying part of our history.
Yeah, that building's about 85 years old, from my records.
I thought it was older than that.
My records indicate it's about 85 years old. And in fact, I think, I keep hitting that button. Sorry, guys. Double check on my, when it was constructed, but my analysis said it was 85 years old.
Yeah, like I said, I'm just disappointed that it couldn't, I was excited when the plan came. It was, like I said, nice tall ceilings and exposed brick, and to me, I guess just bulldoze it, put another bland building up and cram as many apartments in there as we can.
I don't know what the next leg in that proposed, but I think we can still try to reach for a grand, statement piece, and design elements can certainly put into place if the board were to, make those conditions and recommendations in that regards as far as what, the plan would look like coming down the road. But right now, for designation of redevelopment and hitting the criteria, that building certainly meets for the criteria for designation of redevelopment. What that plan looks like later, I think we can still produce something to manifest something grand and spectacular. Because it would call for a redevelopment plan. We don't know what that plan would look like yet, we haven't gotten there.
And the Elks, I guess they closed down lack of membership, or?
I don't know why they closed down, but it's been some time since they've been in there. Nobody's, occupied the building since.
Okay.
Questions? No, okay. Does the public have any questions for this Mr. Frantantoni?
Yes, Vincent Frantantoni, 129 Mount Prospect. Sorry, I didn't get your name.
Alex.
Are you aware when the Elks building was sold?
No.
Oh, okay. Are you aware when it was last used for public events?
A little over 3 years ago, that's when it became vacant.
All right. You said it's abandoned. Are you aware of the new owner, who the new owner is?
Yes.
Have you talked to him?
Yes.
All right. Did he tell you his initial reason for buying the building?
No.
Okay. Did you do, you stated it's too costly to renovate. Did you do a construction estimate on what it would cost to renovate the building?
So that was part of the conversation I had with the current owner as far as, what is the issues with this building that you see, and, how can we get this there? And we walked around, and that's when he showed me the interior and the antiquated systems, and I'm not a builder, I'm a city planner, but, from what we look at from a commercial standpoint or potential mixed use, because that's permitted in the zone, from my understanding from him is I can never make this work here when you have newer buildings popping up left and right. I can sink as much money into this as I need to, but it doesn't make sense to do that if there's another way to kind of bring something that's more marketable to Belleville. That's why he...
So by your own admission just now, you said you're looking for a newer building to be put there. Is that what you just said?
Yes, so redevelopment would, it can go either way, but the redevelopment designation would help to bring something, modern and new that makes these conditions for redevelopment a non-factor.
If I could just, Mr. Frantantoni, if I could just, at this point in the process, with all due respect, Madam Chair, we're just studying the property to see whether, there's a possibility that some of the building will be demolished, some of it won't, all of it will be demolished, maybe it will be, the only purpose of this hearing is Mr. Dougherty's testimony as to whether it meets the criteria to be declared an area need to be. I understand your questions, because it looks like a historic building, right? So, but that has not been predetermined. It's only been directed that it be studied to see whether it will qualify.
But, Mr. Donatello, I hope you notice, I'm only questioning him on his actual statements in writing and what he said here tonight. I'm not going off the track. I've been very careful on that.
That's why I'm clarifying.
He's the one that says he thinks a new building would be much nicer. So I have the right to question him on what he said. That's the law.
Fair enough.
Thank you. You also showed pictures of the kitchen.
Yes.
Who ripped out the kitchen?
I don't have that information available. I have no idea who ripped out the kitchen.
All right. You also showed the main floor.
Yes.
With the dance hall, the oak dance floor in there and all, and then some other debris. Who ripped out the railings and all the other stuff? There's some debris laying around that you showed in your picture. Who ripped that out?
I have no idea. That's what it looked like when I arrived. That's what I photographed. and we walk the building to get the lay of the land and to see exactly what, if anything, was wrong with the building. I don't know what the condition of the building is until I arrive on site.
So you don't know what the building condition was when it was sold? Is that your statement?
Correct.
Thank you. You also mentioned deteriorating sidewalks.
Yes.
Are you aware of the township and the state's plan for the sidewalks on Washington Avenue?
Yes.
Okay. So could that be a reason why somebody wouldn't want to redo sidewalks?
Say that one more time.
If you said you're aware, do you know what the state and the town is going to do with the sidewalks on the entire length of Washington
Yeah, you're
Avenue?
going to make a walkable downtown, you know, healthy, you know.
I'm talking specifically with the sidewalks.
You're going to redo them, yes.
Who's going to do them?
I don't know who's funding that or to what part they're doing that, but there is a plan to redo your Washington corridor.
Okay, so you don't know what's happening with the sidewalks?
Tom, excuse me, to the chair, there's no sidewalk with the skate being done, correct?
The only place new sidewalks going in is on the north end of Washington Avenue, from Graylock north.
But that's not the state,
No,
right?
that's not the state.
The state's only doing what?
The state's curb and bad sidewalk, they're not replacing all the sidewalk with that safety program.
Well, 100 feet from here, I have all the plans of the entire length of Washington, that was presented at a town meeting in this very room of what the entire length of Washington Avenue, all the bumps out, all the planters, all the new sidewalks and all.
No, the state's not putting in planters.
Well, who I said, the state or the town.
The town's just doing the north end, Benny. They're just working on the north end.
Well, all the plans that were presented in this room on 2 occasions show the entire, in fact, they even showed the dollar store and several other existing buildings on there with the fancy sidewalks in front of it. So was that a phony presentation made to the public?
Who made the presentation?
The township and the state of New Jersey, right here in this very room. And the transcript will show I and 25 others question them on these things. And I can run down to my building the next block. I have the plans right there, all color pictures, which they gave to us.
So the dollar store, that he has, already has,
Not the Dollar, Family Dollar.
on the other side, you mean?
Yeah, the pictures show Family Dollar and what they're doing there. They show now it's the human cages on William and Washington. When there was an empty lot, they showed the new sidewalks in front of there that were going to be built and all.
So what they did was, what I think they did, is I think they took the sidewalks that are there and they put a picture over it. Because they look like, if it gets me right, this design is not the design that we chose for the avenue, it's the design that was there for many years, when they did a portion previously. So I think that they were just laying that out in their plan and kind of making whatever other upgrades they were doing. So they were leaving the sidewalks that are already there, because on the Family Dollar side, they do have the nice ones.
No. If you want the history, I've been here 55 years. In fact, Tom Harris was involved. It's a disgrace and an embarrassment. We've had about 3, maybe 4 streetscapes for Washington Avenue. In fact, Tom designed one, which I praised him for, because it was, you'll see it in front of Town Hall, concrete sidewalks with brick accents in there, and I questioned him, you're not going to put the bricks in sand, and he said, no, we're putting a concrete base, and they've never lifted since then, except through construction, right? So that was it. So everybody had to comply with that. All of a sudden, that streetscape went by the way, all right? Before that, we had another streetscape plan. You were supposed to do different stuff, and nobody ever enforces these things. So it's an embarrassment, you know, when you have a streetscape plan, anybody does renovations, and people came up here, they had to do, in fact, my friend, it's now the Chateau something, next to the dollar store there, right? That was my friend. It was a body shop. When he bought it for his antique car collection, he had to make the sidewalks to comply with it. Now that one's out the window, so we keep coming up with all these streetscape plans, and we never enforce it. And Belleville's an embarrassment to the state. So now we're here, we have an expert here who doesn't have the history of it, and he's talking a whole different thing, you know.
Mr. Frank, Tony, may I just say something?
Sure.
That would, I mean, it sounds like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you would want to encourage redevelopment because you could work with the property owner to get whatever you want in front of the property. Is that fair to say?
No, I'm here 55 years. I'm former commissioner, I'm a former vice president of Belleville Chamber of Commerce. We had a fantastic shopping center in town. I have all the pictures. We have beautiful buildings. We have beautiful shops. We had 2 or 3 sidewalk sales a year, which I used to do. We had the Santa Claus thing. Our properties were owned, and we had, all these merchants were good in there. Until what happens, all these developers from out of town, not one of them want to live in Belleville. Not one of them want to live in Belleville. Started with all this thing now of high-rise, you know, the high-density thing, and the Willing Council changes the zoning. When I took office, we had 25 units per acre. Everybody was complaining we're turning into Newark. So I was able to get the votes to reduce it to 16 per acre. After I left office in 1990, the then council at that time reduced it further to 12 units per acre. All right? Now, we got 2 million per acre, whatever you want. We want to build 100 acre, 200 acre, you know, go look at Belmont Avenue. 2 3-family houses on a 25-foot lot. I was there watching the guys, you know, with a pump jack on, right? The guys are on the pump jack trying to nail siding like this. 3 feet between the houses. This is an embarrassment, what's going on in this town, all right?
So
This is not Belleville, the beautiful village. This is becoming a high-density monster like Montclair. I don't know if I tuned into a Montclair meeting about 3 weeks ago. The merchants were up there, it's outraged. Yes, this is overdevelopment. Well,
It's really not over. You're talking about another town. What is it about the streetscape that you can inform us and the questions of our...
It's not only the streetscape. I keep asking him things, he has no knowledge. He don't know when they bought it. He don't know who ripped out the kitchen. He's shown all these things, but he cannot back up who did it.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm sorry to say, let me just finish. It doesn't matter. The testimony today is about what the condition of the property is and does it meet the statute. That's all it is.
Mr. Marinello, in all due respect, let me tell you, it does matter because who put it in that condition? That's the question. That is a serious question. Who put it in that condition? I'm a 30-year member of the Elks Club. We did not leave that kitchen in that condition. So who ripped out that and left it like that? Who left all that debris over the floor and all that? Who neglected? We had no water leak until it was sold. Yes, it matters, and I beg to differ with your opinion. It's absolutely wrong. So we have to know, wait a minute, we have to know who created those conditions. That building was not like that when the Elks, we merged with the Corny Elks, and we meet in their building now on
But once the
Corny
building
Avenue.
was sold,
Right?
and it was in okay condition when you left it,
Yes.
whoever the new owner was, left it and it deteriorated.
Well, that's why he don't know who the new owner is. Is it the person that bought it still the owner? Is he the one that ripped out the kitchen? Is he the one that ripped out the railing? You know, he talks, there's no handicap accessibility. I'm a contractor, many of our members were contractors. We renovated, we built the handicap ramp. Right there, you walk in, we have handicap accessibility. This says no handicap accessibility. So yes, I have the right to question a witness, and his testimony, when I'm questioning his testimony, he can't answer the questions. I don't know his board. And then in respect to Mr. Marinello, it's very important of how it got in that condition. Very, very important, sir. And I'm glad you said that on the record.
I believe it's very important to you. I'm pretty certain everyone in this room would agree it's important to you. But that's not what the statute says. So it's the board's job to determine based on his testimony whether or not it meets the elements of the statute. That statute does not ask anywhere in it, how did the kitchen get in that condition? How is the flooring in that condition? It doesn't ask any of those questions. So if you've been in the building recently and you know the conditions to be different, that might be worth testifying about.
Well, questioning him on his, not only did he say, he put it in writing, he's publicly stating that, and I'm questioning him, this is the time to question the witness, correct?
Yes, if
Yes,
you
and you're
can,
telling me it doesn't matter. As the attorney, you're telling me it doesn't matter.
I'm telling you, it doesn't matter to this board and to this hearing whether or not the conditions of the building are new conditions, old conditions from 85 years ago. The question is, does the building and the properties qualify under the statute?
Under what statute?
The local housing and redevelopment law.
I think it matters.
Again,
I think it matters. If the owner goes in there and says, let me make this building look disheveled so I can get it condemned, get a redevelopment plan, I think that would matter.
I agree with that.
And I
There's
think
no
that's what-
testimony to that.
I think that's what Mr. Frantantoni was saying, that they left it in good shape, now it's all broken apart. Who broke it all apart?
Well, as the new owner, and if hypothetically, I purchased the building and I thought I could fix it and ripped out the kitchen, and now I know I can't do it, because I don't have the.
But now you're going for a redevelopment plan because,
Yeah.
not look at the shape it's in, but if you did
Exactly.
it,
Well, I understand what you're saying, and I don't
Yeah.
disagree with you fundamentally. However, there isn't any testimony that he did it.
he's just asking a question.
Isn't it just about the structure?
Mr. Venero, also, if I could just add, there's several criteria that were identified by Mr. Dougherty, and I know where you're going, I know where Mr. Frantantoni is going. There's also, vacant for a period of 2 years or longer. There's a specific provision in the statute which, if satisfied, would warrant a declaration of or recommendation of an area in need of redevelopment. So, if you take it to its extreme, you could say, well, did the owner just leave it vacant? Was there no market there? We can only go so far as to confirm that it's been vacant for approximately 3.5 years and identify that as a criteria. I think that's what Mr. Dougherty, at least with respect to that.
So, with that being said, that's what I was hoping to get to is, the physical condition of the building is just one minute overall element to the credible findings that I witnessed at the site.
Fair enough.
And I totally understand, a former member, there's some questions that need to be answered. I don't have those answers, and as I think what the Attorney Council was referring to is, I don't have those answers because when I look at the law, I don't need to know who bought it. I don't need to know who ripped out the kitchen. I just need to know what I'm looking at and in reference to the case law. But the condition of the property is just the condition, the layout. The building was built in 1947. It's antiquated, it's older. That design element is not what today is. Certainly, does the conditions matter to the building? Yes. As we talk about the vacancies, yes. We also hit smart growth criteria. There's also an element in the redevelopment and housing law where, when we look at the study area, if a building, which is going to be a unique situation because it's certainly the case for the next study area, if the building is perfectly fine, it doesn't meet Section 5 and those 7 criteria, the housing law to effectuate an overall redevelopment plan to bring the overall site forward, even though a property is deemed 100% perfect, to effectuate the plan, that property can still be included in the study area. This is just a study area. Doesn't mean that building will ever be touched, but we can talk about what that next phase is. Unfortunately, to your conversation, the street, the density, I don't even know what would be. That's not what we're here today. We didn't get to that leg of the race. We're just here to talk about the conditions that I witnessed at the site. That's it.
That's right, and it's my duty and privilege as a citizen to get up, as the law says, to question the witness, what I'm doing. So then we can give the planning board members a true picture of what they're going to be voting on and how the information that you're presenting got to them and the true facts behind your testimony. Now, you mentioned 85-year-old building, an old, obsolete building, right?
I believe this one is 70.
175, one's 85.
Yeah, this one is 75, lot 10 is 85.
Is a 125-year-old building old?
That's what it is.
Right?
So,
Well,
when I look at...
one block from here, I own a 125-year-old building. It's presently under contract, I'm getting a good price for it. The buyers hired a New York firm to do an appraisal, excellent appraisal. So, a I don't know what the age, if you're on the contract, so I maintain my buildings in excellent condition, right? And it's it's being sold now. 120, it's not 85, it's about 75, it was built in 1897. The one next door to me, same thing, built in 1897. He just renovated his, it's a restaurant now, he expanded, you've probably all seen the restaurant, the renovation inside and outside. So, the reason I say this, the age of the building has nothing to do, it's the condition. Has somebody maintained it? We have the Dutch Reformed Church down here, it's 200 and something years old. They're in the process of repairing the storm damage. So, just the fact that it's an 85-year-old building doesn't mean it's eligible for an area in need of redevelopment. And finally, the last thing, I have more to say, I'll say later, but you're using H of the blight statute. I continue to call it the blight statute. That was originally smart growth. All right. You aware when that was added to the blight designation? That wasn't one of the original.
No, it's a newer and urban enterprise zone as well.
And it's very few words, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll bring that up, the final thing there. But that's what I wanted to make is the planning board members have to understand where all these so-called facts came from. Thank you.
Mr. Droz?
Spell my name. Mario Droz, 95, M-A-R-I-O, D-R-O, zebra, 95 Bell Street. You got it, all right. Just a couple simple questions. The old town hall, is that currently gutted, the entire building right now?
For the
Is that a
most,
shell right now?
so
4 walls?
it's just pretty much so there's a floor above it. You can't get to that floor. It's just what's bracing, from my understanding.
So you would say it was 90% vacant, that building right now?
99.9.
Okay, so
It's a shell.
Practically a shell.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I don't know if you'll have the answer. I want to make some, asking the right questions here. Is that building going to be torn down, or you don't know?
I don't know that.
Okay, that's fine, that's fair enough. Now, you work for the developer or the town?
The town.
So the town hired you?
Yes, to take
To
on the study,
investigate this?
yes.
Was there any reason behind them hiring you for that? What reason?
To undertake this
To
study.
undertake this?
Yeah.
I mean, who picked and chose that particular property to be investigated?
How I got to this point is, it's beyond me to the point, there was internal conversations, and as the resolution was, hey, let's study this area, it doesn't meet the qualifications.
Well, not area, you mean particular properties?
No, it's an area, so this particular,
You're talking about the 2 lots together?
yeah, that's the
That's what I
study
mean.
area.
No, when I say area, you're not talking about the whole area.
No, that's the
Those two-
delineation.
those
One
two
one
parcels.
at a time, please.
Okay, 2 parcels of property.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
study
what I'm
area,
alluding to, yeah. Okay, now, you don't know if that's gonna be commercial or retail?
We haven't gotten there.
You don't know, okay, fair enough. Now, the question I have is, the zoning on that.
Yes.
When was it zoned, that particular zone? What year? Do you have a date on that?
I
And
do.
what was it before that? What was the date?
So I don't have the dates, but I know, because this is one of the conversations I had, that there was a prior zone, there was some zone change.
Does anybody have that information?
I don't have that date.
Okay, so in other words, that particular block, that whole block we're looking at, so I'm just trying to figure out what year that was zoned.
I don't know when the zone
No, the
changed.
reason I'm bringing that up, I'll tell you what I'm alluding to.
Yes.
Because I'm trying to figure out if that was zoned when there was an improper planning board that may have voted on it, which may be illegal. So if it was done in 2020, 21, was it changed after that? Because that's one period of time, which we all know, the planning board appointments were challenged. So my question is, was that property?
That's not exactly true.
No. Well, I think we have a ruling from Mr. Case on that, so let's not argue the point.
Okay,
Well-
so could you just,
Yeah, so
We have a
the,
rule
I just
on
wanted to just put out there, regardless of what the zone is,
No, what I'm
the
saying
zone
is-
has no
is-
bearing on the
No,
facts
yes, it
of
does.
redevelopment law.
One at a time,
Okay,
please.
I know. But it does make a difference. If it was improperly, so what happens if somebody challenges it for a developer here, and somebody says, well, you know what, that was recommended by an illegal,
all right,
improper.
Mr. Droz, talking about something that doesn't
No,
matter.
but the zoning does make a difference here. I need to know what the zoning is.
We-
Answer the zoning,
So
I won't answer the question.
I think if I understand your question,
That was number 4, us.
Yeah.
this process,
Wait, two of you can't talk.
this process is to determine whether it's an area in need of redevelopment.
I know that, I
okay?
know.
So what would follow this is what's called a redevelopment plan. You've been at these hearings, I know, Mr. Draws. So that would then become a new zoning. And generally speaking, it's not required, it's called a superseding redevelopment plan. Means it overrides everything, all the zoning before, unless specific provisions are brought in. So I think that Madam Chair said it accurately, I don't think there is anything defective about the underlying zoning. Even if there were, this would supersede all the underlying zoning.
But that's not the point I'm bringing out.
Okay, then maybe I'm
If
misunderstanding.
it was, but you know what I'm saying.
I don't, actually. I
In
want
other
to.
words, if that, say, late in 2020,
We're playing.
which I still disagree with the way the board was appointed at the time, okay? And it was zoned a particular zone. So that zone, and say it's current right now, was not they were not supposed to vote on that and make that recommendation.
I agree with you, Chair. That's not.
All right, let's skip that, but we can go further on later on with that.
Yeah.
Okay, now here's the question. All right, that's an area of redevelopment. This is what we're talking about today.
Designation, yes.
Right, okay. Now, the entire town is already zoned as an area of rehabilitation. And I'm looking at the attorney there, maybe he can probably answer this one. So why do we have to even look at a particular parcel of property for an area of redevelopment when we have an area of rehabilitation? If you have an area of rehabilitation, let's put it this way. If I was a developer, and let's forget about the words redevelopment. If I came into town and said, you don't want to buy that building, all I do, buy a building, like in the old days, 30, 40 years ago, forever, till only about 5 years ago, you would go with your plans to the planning board, zoning board, the proper boards, and just build what you want, and they'll approve it or disapprove. And what I'm saying is, we're like picking and choosing properties that are redevelopment, when you could do it already without a redevelopment plan. You could do the same thing without development plan. Make sense? Suppose I bought that property, and there was nobody even told me I can designate that as an area of redevelopment. Well, I can go there, come in front of the planning board, zoning board, go to the construction code officer, hey, I want to build this, I want to knock this building down, or I renovate it, I want to add. I would go in front of the board like in the old days. I sat on the planning board for 8 years, and that's what people did. So I don't see why we're even here designating a particular property when you could do it when in an area of rehabilitation, because there's rehabilitation versus redevelopment. One means 5-year tax abatement, one means 25. So it all boils down to.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Sheldon?
Question?
You good? Again?
There's been questions?
Well,
I'll
mostly questions, but I just wanted to.
swear you're in now.
Okay, all right,
It's
to cover
probably
all
out of
bases, just in
statement.
case, sorry.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Michael Sheldon, 47 Flood Street. As Belleville's would-be quirky version of Sheldon Cooper with a partial eidetic memory, I just want to add a couple of facts to the previous testimony. Mr. Venero earlier asked about this particular property, the old Belleville Hall, we know as the old Belleville Hall. Yes, it was heard, it was the first major case under the new administration. It was August of 2018, and you were chair at the time, and it was approved. And as I'm sure you recall, that project also included a penthouse complex on the roof.
Correct.
Right, there was that addition to it, but I just wanted that to go on record. A moment ago, Mr. Gross was talking about zoning changes, and it looked like Mr. Banda was chomping at the bit to get the date out. But the new zoning, the preponderance of the zoning changes were adopted by the council on July 9th, 2019. All right, I know that date very well. It has 1,000 other consequences. During all this discussion, there's been numerous references to the construction date for the old Belleville Hall. And while I was sitting in the audience, I popped on to NewJerseyParcels.com, which is a very well-known, respected real estate site. And yes, they do list the construction date as 1937, which confirms what Mr. Dougherty has been saying, that the building is 85 years old. However, it's always been my understanding that that building was constructed some point during the mid to the latter part of the 1800s, and I was hoping that our township historian, Michael Perrone, might make a presence here, and fortunately, knock on wood, lo and behold, there he is, sitting in the back. He pretty much knows the history of every major building in this township, so perhaps he would like to give some input about the history of that building as far as he knows it. Just as a matter of reference, the dates for the construction of my home, they're all...
Can we narrow?
Yeah, but I just wanted it to be known that there's lots of errors, online errors. According to the town, they have my house being built 20 years earlier than it actually was. So, you know, I never swear by any online dates for any piece of construction. So I just wanted to say that much. All right, so my question. There are two owners for these two properties. Belleville Ventures LLC for the old Belleville Hall and Belleville Ventures 2 for the Elks Club. Both of these LLCs came into existence. The first one, which took ownership of the old Belleville Hall, that LLC formed towards the end of 2021. And then when the Elks Club was purchased in the early part of 2022, this Belleville Ventures 2 entity was formed. But interestingly enough, both LLCs are operating out of a nondescript UPS post office box at a UPS store in Secaucus. And again, because of my quirky eidetic memory, box 191. All right. Mr. Dougherty mentioned that he went for walks through these buildings with the owner. I would like to know, can you give us, for the record, a name of the owner, or is all of this going to be cloaked under an LLC? I'd like to know, for the record, who actually is the person or persons who own these properties.
It really doesn't matter.
Well, yes, it does, because it is within the realm of possibility that, you know, for all we know, I know it's hypothetical, but suppose that someone on the planning board is a partner in one of these LLCs. Yes, they would be conflicted, and they should necessarily then recuse themselves, but unless that information is publicly disclosed, how do we know? So I would like to know, and perhaps the law is such, obviously I'm not a lawyer, perhaps I know a lot of this LLC law is designed specifically to hide the identities of owners, but I think we're owed, we should all know who actually owns these properties. Is it John Smith? Mary Jones? Who are the actual owners? Could a name or names be given for the record tonight? Or is this mystery going to continue where even when you go to the Essex County Deeds Office, no names? Well, but when I'm on the Essex County Deeds Register website almost on a daily basis now, and every document, whether it's a deed, mortgage, etc., they're all referenced by Belleville Ventures LLC. You cannot find the name. So it's almost as though, I'll try not to wear my foil hat too much tonight, but it's almost as though they're going, you know, beyond the pale to hide who they are. And I have to ask why. I mean, almost every other project in this township, especially those that have come before this board in the last few years, I've been able to readily find the actual names of owners.
I don't know. Could you possibly?
I don't know to the extent
No.
if there's multiple individuals in the LLC, the property is under one common title and ownership, which if it was, you know, an issue, that's also an area for redevelopment, because that kind of stops, you know, any progress with multiple titles.
Is a vote, like you said, to bring it to council, just to review. Okay, I too, I've had a lot of conversations, and I wholeheartedly feel, and I want everybody to know, especially for those that are here, and, well, they're not watching, of course, that I'm reserved in a lot of different ways, but it should go, right? We are working in a redevelopment planning committee, and we are putting teeth into things, right, for developers to feel. And I know, we know what we're talking about at that level, and I know how I feel. But this vote today is to bring it up to the council to then take it to the next step. So don't anybody feel, I feel that no one should walk away from this thinking that it's a shoo-in for the next steps, 1, 2, or 3. So that's my comments.
So I want to kind of build on that. I mean, this is my feeling with this one and the next one and any other one that comes before us. First off, this one, you know, I know that we were debating the Elks Club, but nobody's debating the old hall. And based on the rules, even if we debate back and forth about the Elks or what happened to the Elks in the middle, it doesn't have to qualify at the end of the day because the other one definitely does. I mean, we had a developer in here that was going to try to restore it. His plans fell apart when the fact that the foundation and everything underneath was unstable. The back building had to come down. The front building couldn't be stabilized. I mean, it is truly a problem. So in my eyes, the site does qualify just because of that. If we don't go forward with this, and if the town, because we're only recommending, if the town doesn't go forward with this, there's nothing in place, and I did ask around about this, because I asked Mr. DiLorenzo, I tried to find out with the historic committee. These buildings aren't deemed historic. There's nothing to protect them from anybody coming in tomorrow, pulling a demo permit, and just knocking them down. And that's the end of them anyway. So in doing this, I hope that in some way the town can work with the future developers, whoever they may be, whoever owns it, doesn't matter, that they can work to kind of preserve some of the history of the buildings in any way possible if they can, through architecture, through preserving pieces of the structure, through rebuilding the structure if financially feasible under a different path. So to me, I think maybe this is a better route than just kind of letting it continue to fall into disarray. And I'll say that probably about the next one.
It is, and it's been eyesores for a long time.
So do I get any other comments or any other concerns? No?
At this point, you need a motion.
We make our final comments, the public can make their final comments.
We had that.
No, that was questioning the witness. Madam Chairman, if you didn't conduct the meeting properly.
That's fine. There's not a single person who didn't come up and give their opinion while they were asking their questions.
Well, you conducted the meeting improperly.
That's
It's
not
not
true.
our fault.
Well, if you want me, each time you come up here and you start to give me your stories about the history of Belleville to stop you and interrupt you, I could, but I try to let you have your space to make your points.
But if you notice, and the transcript will prove it, I was just questioning him on his presentation when you folks kept interrupting me.
I don't
And
agree
Mr.
with you.
Donatello got up and also interrupted me, my
Well, because he
question.
was trying to help.
I believe I heard testimony about your building down the street that's 135 years old, and the guy next door who renovated it. None of that had anything to do with his
He
testimony.
most certainly did, Mr. Marinello, because he is using 85-year-old building and the 75-year-old building that criteria. So I asked him if he would consider a 125-year-old building. It definitely has it. Now, you know, your attorney there doesn't mean you're always right.
That's
Now,
true.
that was-
My wife reminds me of that every night.
That was his testimony, verbally and in writing. An 85-year-old building are obsolete, no good, and so it was perfectly good question to ask the person.
You're gonna let him testify, then just swear him in and let him do it.
Yes.
At some point in time, I'll be right again.
And, you know, not for nothing, when you come up to question the witness, you don't have to be sworn in. So I hope you learn how to conduct a meeting. I've been here 50 years meeting and do it right next time.
Okay, this is gonna, the future of this is going to be very structured then. I'll let it be the structured way that you want it to be, but then you're gonna ask questions that are structured as to the testimony, and we're not gonna have to care about the appraisal that you had done on your building and how you're getting a really fair price. You're gonna ask questions, and then you can give me your opinion later when you're sworn in. But the way you like to do it is to do both at the same time.
When I'm questioning the witness, don't
I tried to
interrupt.
give
Then
as
question
much
the
leeway.
witness.
I just have one
I tried to
question.
give as much leeway so everybody can say what they want.
You have a question for him?
But we're either gonna be very structured and stay on the guidelines from now on then. So this way the
Through the chair.
usuals We'll do that.
You were
Please give a
conducting the
summary.
meeting, not me.
Yes, I was, and I was trying to give some leeway, and I'm trying to give courtesy so everyone feels that they were heard. But apparently, that doesn't work.
Through the chair, I just want to ask
Yes.
Mr. Frantantoni a question. You did say, Mr. Frantantoni, that you had the developer coming in looking at your property, very, very good. What
I
happened?
didn't say a developer.
Yes, you did.
I said a buyer,
I ended up from New York City, whatever.
an appraiser.
Appraiser,
The
I'm sorry.
buyer,
I'm sorry.
the buyer got an appraiser to
So
come
that's
in.
good, thank God.
Right.
Now, what happens, that buyer comes in, and he comes before this same planning board to want to do the same thing that these developers are asking with your property. Are you going to come up here and say, you can't do that?
Yes.
Or you will, because you got your money.
Yes.
And you got your money.
Yes, I will, and I'll tell you why. I was offered $100,000 more by another guy who wanted to put a marrow joint. I should get out the door. Money don't impress me that much. My integrity is. And you know, my wife and I have been against marijuana for 50 years, okay? We've had relatives that died from it, and we don't want it. So yes, in fact, it's not hypothetical. And I have the email I printed out of a guy who offered me $100,000 more than I'm getting, but he wanted to put a marijuana joint, and I gave him the door. So money doesn't impress me. You know, my integrity and
No, I'm not
my
saying it's money,
beliefs
all I'm saying is
are
if a
more.
developer came in, and after the owner came in and wanted to buy your property, and they did, and it was lucrative, God bless you, life is good, and they come in here, and they want to come in front.
I'm glad you asked that, because number one, that's one answer. The other one, a developer who right in Belleville got approved for a big high-rise development, came to me and wanted to buy the property too, and told me he can get the other neighbors there to 4 lots, and we can get you big money and blah, blah. I showed him the door. In addition to that, you got another developer who's been fighting to build something for years. This I couldn't understand. And let this be part of my testimony, so swear me in. Swear in. I do.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, so help you God?
I married? A couple of years ago, shocked as hell, this developer is fighting to build something that I'm against for years. And my little flip phone gets a call one day from him. What the hell is he calling me for, right? I'd like to meet with you. Yeah, fine. So, next day, the Arlington Diner. We sat there for 2 hours. I know you're an influential person in town. Now, I want to build this with your help. You persuade. No, I said, look, I don't know how long I'm going to live, but until my dying day, nothing's going to be built there, all right? And he said, but you know, I can take care of you know, and I paid for my own coffee. But the thing is, so I'm glad you asked the question, because it would be improper for me to sell it, but I can now say it publicly to answer your question. So thank you. So there's 3 examples where money didn't impress me, bribes don't impress me. You know, I'm the oldest of 7. My father almost died when I was 7. From the hospital, he wrote me a letter. I have nothing to give you but my name. Don't harm it. Anyway, I'm opposed to this development because it appears to be a scam. It appears the developer wants the entire block from the phone company to the Elks to build a monstrous thing. There's several reasons. It appears the same one that wants to, next up here is the Cosarelli funeral home thing, right? The other thing, 264 Washington Avenue, which when I was involved, we gave them violation. That I agree is a deteriorating building. It was just sold for $200,000 a couple of months ago, right? So what's going on here is a plan, that whole area, from the new buildings, that doctor and the pharmacy, where the 2 buildings burnt down a few years ago. That doctor built a beautiful building with apartments, a lot of parking in the rear on Valley Street. That's a nice new building. From there to the telephone company, it appears by all the stuff that's going on, they want that whole section, all right? And it's dangerous. Number one, it's ugly. Number one, as Mr. Venero says, we're destroying all our properties. And number 3, which should be number 1, it's across from the middle school, which is going to expand now. Now, do we want all that traffic and all that development and that high-density housing right across the street? And I beg to differ with Mr. Graziano, because he's on the wall, oh, this is nothing here, because then it's go to the council. No, this is your job. The planning board's job is to say whether it's reasonable, feasible, or practical. It's your vote to go. You don't dump it on the council, because then the council, you included, say, oh, the planning board said it's okay. It's your job. It's you 7 members, it's your job tonight to say this is wrong. With all the evidence I and a few others have been, and it's not only my hearsay, look at the record. I went on Zillow, that 264 was sold off. This, and you're saying this building, he was approved. He first came, he wanted to build 20 some odd units. Back then, it went before the zoning board. The zoning board said he can only build 11. Well, he come back, he made adjustments, I think he got approved for 17 and all that. And the reason, there may be some structural things, most of it, he ripped half the building apart in the construction. In my opinion, the real reason he stopped the concern, because the planning board recommended to the council to change the zoning ordinance, and the council, you, a member of the council, you changed the zoning ordinance to include all from 25 units per acre to all this high density. So he says, what the hell am I going to build 24 units for? I'll build 150 units, all right? So this is an embarrassment to the town, and you planning board members, I don't know if you're aware of it, you're being used to do something for the council so then they could say, oh, 2 weeks ago, we got a letter from the planning board, and they believe it's an area in need of redevelopment. Which, you've got some facts before you now. The expert here was challenged on some of the things he says. A lot of them he didn't know the answers to and all that. So I'm begging you people. It's Belleville, the cherry blossom capital of America behind you, which Belleville means beautiful village. Let's keep it, let's stop these things, because this high-density housing is coming to an end. A month ago, I tuned into the Montclair council meeting, one after the other getting up there, opposed to that monster Lackawanna Plaza, but the citizens say, enough with this overdevelopment in Montclair. Bloomfield, the same thing. My 2 sons live in Bloomfield. You can't get through Bloomfield no more. And it doesn't help the taxes, because my son just got a $2,000 one-year increase. All right, with all this development in there. So, look at Montclair. They're out, and then they just redid Montclair with all these fancy left turn lanes around. Nobody can go. My daughter lives in Roseland. So 11 years ago, 15 minutes to go up there. Brookfield Avenue, Lakeside, up to our house. It's now 45 minutes to an hour. You can't get through Montclair. The overdevelopment is unbelievable. Look at beautiful Bloomfield Center, where I started as assistant manager in National Shoes. It was called the shopping hub of suburban Essex. Look at it now. They tore down the movie theaters, 5, 6-story apartments, wedged through it. Look at the road. When you go in, it's about 15 feet wide to go from Glenwood Avenue over and all that. So this is overdevelopment. It's your job as a planning board. Enough is enough. This thing, you've been given enough evidence by citizens here. You've got to say no. This is not, if they want to build, like I think Mr. Dro said, you've got a building department. Just go there and get a permit. If it's allowed, or if you even need a variance, you come before you or the zoning board and let them do it that way. But an area in need of redevelopment, no. This is not an AINOR. This is an AINOR, I-N-O-R, in need of repair, not an area in need of redevelopment. Thank you. I hope you do the right thing.
Anyone else would like to have a summation? Seeing no hands, I close this portion. So we need a resolution for this.
Yes, you need to, what's called for is a resolution by the board, either in favor of the designation of an area in need of redevelopment, or not in favor, based on the testimony that's before the board tonight. So, either way, there'll be a resolution prepared. Oh, we're missing something. Okay.
continue, and then we'll pick up after this. I know you need the break. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
We're taking a 5-minute break. A redevelopment resolution, nay or not? Who will make that resolution for redevelopment, motion rather?
Motion to approve?
Motion to recommend? Yes. I motion to recommend.
Second.
Okay. Roll call.
Chairwoman Honorata.
Yes.
Mr. Vanda.
Yes.
Mr. Graziano.
Yes.
Ms. Wyman.
Yes.
Ms. Nettleford.
Yes.
Mr. Venero.
Yes.
Mr. Guyan.
Yes.
Okay, approved all in favor.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next proposal is PB 2214, 272, 274, and 278 Washington Avenue and 163 Valley Street. You're up.
Madam Chair, you don't need to hear from me. You save some time and also keep Mr. Doherty.
Mr. Doherty.
Yes, so very much in a similar manner as the last one. I prepared some exhibits here that kind of condense and, we can have a discussion for what's in the report. And then, again, there's some appendices to the report as well, and we can move forward from there. So for this particular study, we are looking at the address 272 and 274. We're looking at and 274 through 278 Washington Ave, as well as 163 Valley Street. We're at block 8701, lots 14, 15, and 18. So this one is a 3-lot study, as the last one was 2. So again, this is the resolution on September 27th of last year, authorizing the planning board to conduct a preliminary investigation. This slide here, outlined in yellow, is a map of the study area, and then again consisting of 3 lots, and for a total acreage here of 0.4402 acres. Lot 14, 0.643, lot 15 is 0.27, lot 18 is 0.1059 here. The next slide, reflective of the last presentation, is your zoning map, the BG commercial residential mixed-use zone. Outlined in yellow is the study area. So we'll start with lot 14, and we'll kind of go from there. For this particular property, it was unique. As it's a mixed-use building here on lot 14, a portion of it during my study would hit criteria A and B, but the entire study area for this property would be as well as D and H. So we'll go into that a little bit. Part A, substandard building conditions, generally substandard, unsafe, and dilapidated, obsolete, possess any characteristics of lacking air, light, open space, and be conducive to a wholesome living and working environment. And I think that's the key here. Also abandonment of 2+ years or more, obsolete, faulty design, as well as smart growth principles. So again, as I declared, it's a two-part here. First floor, it's occupied, but the second floor is not. So we have a partially vacant structure here, limited on-street parking. There's also this unprotected drop-off area on the side where a handrail is, and that's just kind of from the front. Again, we have some large voids in the public sidewalk. This property, to me, is really interesting from the rear. This is a shot from the rear. It's hard to tell on this particular photo, but the next one you'll see it clear. We have very low-hanging electrical wires that travel to the property, and right on the other side of those evergreens is a very steep drop-off. Very unsafe. The property to the rear is bound by retaining walls. You can see here we have those low-hanging utility wires and electrical wires coming to the property, and some of that retaining wall issues. And this is another perspective of just how steep of a retaining wall drop we're talking about. Again, this is a mixed-use building, residential on top. We definitely have some concerns here about the design and layout of this building. As we go to an aerial view, the building that we're talking about here, lot 14, is the one with the black roof, small. It's just in the shadows, if you will, of the gray one. With the gray sedan in the front. So as you can see, there really is no circulation to the property as far as access. It's on-street parking, And what's interesting about that is access to the residential apartment is through a shared driveway with a neighboring property. So there's certainly a hazard, an unprotected ingress and egress for the upper level residents, which might indicate, the unsafe conditions here. But what's interesting, when I took a look at the upper apartment here, it's been vacant for nearly 15 years from my understanding. This is its current conditions. As you see, it's not really habitable to be occupied from a residential standpoint. Floors and everything, beams exposed. This is the bathroom. Certainly it's not occupiable. When I look at the overall building itself, I did notice some other things. The rear foyer, a large crack and some water damage coming in through the ceiling. So again, it's reflective here on this photo. The windowsill is also, as you can see off to the right, water damage. We start walking our way back downstairs, missing voids in the handrails. This is the staircase going to the basement, taken at eye level, very low head clearance here. And what was alarming is the antiquated systems in the basement and the condition of the basement. It's seen better days, if you will. And that's kind of the utilitarian elements in the basement of the property. And this particular property is relatively small. It's 105 years old. And for this property, given the conditions upstairs, and the conditions downstairs, or it's being occupied by the insurance company, you would have thought there were two different buildings. So the entire site will satisfy the building for purpose D, as well as purpose H for smart growth. And that upper level, if you will, would be for the purpose A due to the substandard and unsafe living conditions, and which are conducive to the living environment here. And we have purpose B here because it's been vacant for, like I said, approximately 15 years. So the criteria for that is 2. So for this one, going back to resolution, in part, the entirety or part of the study area. In this unique case, part of the building itself meets a separate, criteria. So it's a unique situation here with that building. Again, real concern about the retaining walls and that steep drop, and we'll talk about the topography on the last and just get a real understanding how that grade works back there. Lot 15, it's a big structure. This is the funeral home here, and for this particular property, my credible findings here are for criteria D and H of the local redevelopment housing law, and that is faulty design and smart growth principles. When I look at this property here, so it's a very good looking building, architecturally wise, but the design, the layout, it's got its real limitations. Right off the bat, for a funeral home, there is limited circulation and parking, and it does not help with the fire hydrant right in the front of that building. As we see, the conditions of the sidewalk certainly poses hazards to the public. And then that ingress, egress here, one-way access with the neighboring property with that doorway in the middle. You can just get a real vantage point of just how tight that drive aisle is. And then, as we look at the rear of the property and what's behind it, we do have an awful amount of excessive pavement here with this property. And there's a second structure, and it's this, two-story garage structure. But what's interesting, though, it doesn't help with the site circulation, right? It's limited, and I think when you really get an understanding of just how steep that grade and that drop is, it's the size of a two-story structure. Again, we do have a fairly large curb cut here. Unfortunately, it still has its limitations with the size of that curb cut on Valley. And then, as we look at this aerial view here, it is a very tight rear portion of the property for, turning around radiuses and so forth. I know we're allowed to park on the street in that regards, but from a revitalization point, this has real limitations with that design layout being what it is. In this particular property, it's 130 years old. It's old. 130 years ago, this was designed, and it was at its prime. This photo here, I think it might be hard to tell. I had a unique opportunity to really get to know this building. The roof of the building has been, resurfaced and resealed several times, but unfortunately, the water still pools up on the roof and has caused some serious issues internally. And this is the rear of the building as well. There is a small residential portion to it for in-house, if you will, suite for operations of the funeral home. But as we look in here, to tell by this photo, in multiple rooms, when you look at the ceiling, there is just large voids of cracks that have been constantly repaired and so forth. And again, that's that water pooling up on the roof. It's evident here in this photo, and certainly evident in the middle of the I guess the funeral home entrance and you know, the concessions of it, if you will. And it's caused ceiling cave-ins, as well as in the window sills here. You can see their water damage. You can tell by the curtain. If you look on the bottom of that AC system there, you can see it's just rotted out. And just right outside that window, you can really get a perspective. That's where that roof is. As we go internal, the entire of this property is flights of stairs. This one particularly doesn't have any handrails, really low head clearance on these stairs, designed, you know, like I said, 130 years ago. Again, this is another rear portion of the stairs for the rear entrance here. And then this is the antiquated, you know, facilities for the apartment, dated kitchen. It's from my understanding that most of this stuff, it's built in some time period, is all asbestos related. And we have an elevator shaft. Again, it's a funeral home. You know, obviously we think we understand what this was used for. This has stopped working. It's been an issue for quite some time. You look at the systems in place here, we can just tell, you know, when we look at the building, as we try to bring it to a more modern, contemporary use here and just keeping up with standards and codes in just the industry. Installation to make it modern has certainly caused some issues. We have several heating and furnace apparatuses here, again, that just kick on, kick off. There's another dated one for ventilation and heating. Again, if you take a look at the pipe here, another asbestos pipe right here in the foreground. Interesting enough, we have a drainage sink right next to the electrical box. You know, things you wouldn't see in modern building codes. The tile, again, asbestos tile, it's deteriorating, falling apart. And so with this particular building in this lot, I think what's important to know as we look at purpose D here, it's really the layout. The layout is a concern as we look at it. The design, it certainly is not consistent with today's standards and codes. And when we look at, you know, potentially doing something here, we explored options, had conversations, and, you know, the circulation is a serious concern if we try to make this a viable piece of property on, you know, the main avenue in Washington Ave. The cost to do anything that would make sense here for a parking deck for adequate circulation, and it's, again, it's appendicized at the end of the report, and you can see the numbers there. In that report, to sum that up, one parking stall equates to about $33,000 a stall, one stall. So as we talk about trying to make the site more conducive to the market and potential renovations and adaptive reuse here, just to take that 2 garage story structure down, to put a parking deck, to add that circulation element here, you know, it becomes ridiculous in cost. Then as you look at the systems in place there, conversion of a funeral home to whatever it may be, you know, it really starts to add up. The building is old, the ceiling's not holding up, unfortunately, it's outlived its glory days. It's a good-looking building, but as far as this criteria, without you know, straying away confidently, this criteria D, and then again, it would hit H for smart growth. The last lot in this study area, lot 14, if you will, is, did I go backwards? I'm sorry. 18, I'm sorry. I jumped ahead. So this is the ending of that. So when we go to lot 18 here, the last one in here, is a detached single-family dwelling. This is a different requirement for the local housing and redevelopment law, which would be section 3. Now with this, underlying, a redevelopment area may include land, buildings, or improvements which of themselves are not detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare, but the inclusion of which is found necessary with or without change in their condition for the effective redevelopment of the area of which they are a part of. So with that being said, this is a good-looking building. You know, it's livable. It's habitable. There's people living in there, families, and so forth. Some critiques: there's no, you know, off-street parking. You know, we have the unprotected stairs going there. Some crumbling retaining wall side blocks. Nothing too critical. The rear yard is bound by 2 massive retaining walls. And again, some aerial photo here in relation to the overall study area. This is that bird's eye view. What's interesting about this property, if you will, when we come to the critical findings of why we should include this, is the property in question would square off that irregular shape of that funeral home. If we go back here, it kind of squares it off. And why is that important? When we look at that, the irregular shape of lot 15 would give you greater transition between the grades, which is why we have those retaining walls here. We have about a 23-foot drop from Washington to Valley, which is why those retaining walls are there. Also, what's important to note is the redevelopment of this area with the frontage on Valley Street here. The adjacent lot 15 would provide for adequate double access drive aisle improvements for circulation according to your design standards of your code, section 20-1.6 D-2. You need a certain width to do a double drive access, and unfortunately, without that piece of property, lot 15 doesn't have that availability. But also, when we look at it, it's very much a non-permitted use in the zone. So there's nothing more that could be, just a pre-existing non-conforming single-family house. And then at the same time, it is substantially undersized for the zone, 4,613 square feet, where a permitted use, the smallest permitted use is a 5,000 square foot lot. So it's a non-permitted, undersized lot. I think the inclusion of that property, lot 18, would be advantageous to the overall study area and to see what maybe, if anything, could come of that. With that, again, redevelopment designation is a mechanism to reverse the site's continued stagnation. I think it's financially feasible to renovate and restore the study area and the buildings within to a quality where it can remain competitive with newer commercial and mixed-use buildings within the area. Without immediate repairs and such extensive renovations, the overall site poses public safety concerns, and the buildings will continue to trend towards the vacancy. I say trend towards vacancy because the funeral home, it's at partial, I didn't give it a complete vacancy, but it's got limited service. It's trending towards vacancy. The apartment upstairs is not being occupied. Service is minimal. Next door, the entire apartment on that has been vacant. Just that commercial strip in the front, that's really the viable piece here. And again, we have a really good, family, single-family home, but we can include that to make an overall, an effective study area. But with that, that's the facts of the finding, and I'll conclude with that for any questions. If you want to dig into it deeper.
163 Valley. Can you
Yes.
tell me, it looks very well maintained?
Yes. It's a 125-year-old building. It looks great. Yeah. Yeah, lot 18. So it doesn't, in redevelopment law, section 5 has those 7 criteria. Section 3 says you don't have to meet that criteria, but the inclusion in that study area is essentially what can help manifest a better product. Doesn't mean you have to use it or don't use it, but in this particular case, it certainly helps square that off, adds that linear frontage on Valley per your ordinance for 2 drive aisle access. We have that grade 23-foot drop, which is equivalent to a 2-story building from Valley to Washington. So inclusion in that could potentially manifest something good. Doesn't necessarily mean they'll use it.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question. Maybe this is for Tom Harris. Tom, those wires that are going behind that property, is that up to code? Looks like somebody could walk right into them.
It's pretty low.
How's that permitted?
That's a, I don't know how they, I would think that's a public service.
I think that should be looked into. I would think you'd need a pole in the back to raise those wires up. To me, it looks like somebody could walk and touch them, get electrocuted.
I think it speaks to the grade topography. That's a 23-foot elevation
Yeah, I
from
understand
Valley
that, but
to
maybe
that
there should be
building.
another pole to raise those wires up.
Right.
It looks like a safety hazard.
Again, who cared around that area? The people rented it.
And my second question is, here I go again. To me, it's a beautiful historic building. It's part of the history of Belleville. The town is in the process of building a shared service parking garage directly across the street. We couldn't find a use to maybe renovate, completely gut this building and make it something useful instead of, I know you guys, it's not part of the plan, knock it down, but we all know that's what's gonna happen. Being it's such a nice building, it's not feasible, Dean, to renovate, maybe completely gut it and renovate it into something useful?
Paul, I think the decision for you, Ray, is I think you're talking about the property on the slide that's shown now?
No,
The funeral home. It's such a beautiful, historic building.
Well, I think I'll kind of respond the same way, that we really don't know what the ultimate outcome. I think Mr. Banda had mentioned maybe there's going to be a hybrid of, maybe a design that harkens back to what the building was, or partial reuse of a portion of the building. I don't know if that's something that will all end up in the plan.
I mean, just we have so much development going on Washington Avenue, it would be nice to preserve. To me, it's one of the nicest buildings we have in the town. I mean, I understand the funeral business is, it's a dying business. Funeral parlors are closing, I understand, it's closing all over.
I think,
But
I
nobody
think
wanted it for
Alex,
funeral home.
Yeah, I understand that.
Alex had said, like, if you go into that building, you know, funeral homes are laid out, they're all parlor rooms, and they're all kind of.
Even like Zaro's is knocked down, I mean, I understand the funeral business, it's not like it used to be, but
It's either really big or it's dying.
we can't repurpose the building anyway?
TV site.
That comes in the
TV
next, that
Yeah,
comes,
I don't think
that comes in the next.
Yeah, I don't
that's-
think the question is yes or no.
Yeah, it's not.
This would,
If you're putting three pieces of property together, the ultimate plan is bulldoze and put one new.
That's not necessarily
That's not,
true.
that's negotiations.
But that, again, I just want to make that comment that I made before, in the fact that if the town doesn't act to do something like this, there's really no conversation that we can have or any say that we have in terms of how the site gets either repaired, redeveloped, whatever it may be. Again, there's nothing to protect the buildings, so if we don't do anything, the new owner can demolish it. The new owner can come in and completely white out the facade, tear down the canopy, gut the entire interior and do whatever they want with it.
Or nothing.
Or nothing, and just let it destroy. I mean, going down this path does give the township some say, and I hope, because I do agree with you, I think that we should preserve some of the architecture and some of the things that make us who we are. But I think there's a lot of different ways we can do that, and I hope that whatever is decided on this, because I haven't seen anything, I have no idea what their plans are, but I do hope that whatever it is does incorporate some, all of it, whatever it may be, of these two properties into whatever the future of development's gonna be.
I mean, I love the building there, it is in disrepair. My problem is that the house in the back. What, if we do this, what happens to the value of that property? It's a shame, because it's in good condition.
I would think the value would go up.
Could potentially go up.
Possibly, possibly not, more than likely if you're doing an area in need of redevelopment.
But also, there's no condemnation on.
No, there's not.
Right, so it's not like anything can be taken from anyone.
Yeah.
I just have a question.
Yes.
If you could clarify something. I think it was point A of like designating this. You
Yes.
mentioned today's market for commercial space. One of those lines.
Right, so when we look at, well, purpose A would be, on redevelopment, would be substandard, unsafe conditions of a building that would make it unconducive to wholesome living and work environments. But B would be obsolete design and faulty layout of various reasons. And because of this layout, when we look at potential buildings and modern designs and land use codes and engineering codes, this has serious limitations, right? So when you look at, I want to put a business here, you're going to be, well, how do I get to this site? How do my customers get here? What's the circulation pattern? How many parking stalls do I have? You know, what's the overall condition? So that's kind of the flavor of what I mean by market. And then when you look at the overall 100-something-year-old building, what's in here, right? The asbestos pipes, the furnaces, everything that kind of plays into it. It's not necessarily built to code that we see today. So when you look at what's on the market today versus this, with these limitations, it's not necessarily a competitive property in that regards. Is it attractive? Yeah, it's attractive.
Sure. So my question is not about the layout and like how it's being used right now. I think one of the criteria, I can't remember it verbatim, is that it's not suitable to be used for a commercial space.
No. Suitability wise?
Could you bring up, I think it was point A, can you just go back?
So in the report, just so we're on the same page, the whole redevelopment criteria law, in their verbatim word for word, starts on page 4. That's cut and pasted right out of the land use law.
Page 4, you said?
Yeah. On both study areas.
Right, you're saying.
So the word commercial would be in B for a building of that's been vacant for 2 years. I didn't put criteria B on this particular one because it is technically still in very minimal operations for the crematorial process. It's not really holding excessive amounts of showings and viewings for mourning services. So it's still in operation, yes, on a very limited capacity, but nonetheless, I'm not going to reach and say it's abandoned because that's not the case.
You said it was partial matching for A, B, and then...
Oh, the second one, yes, on the first lot. I thought you
Yeah.
were still talking about the funeral home, I'm sorry. Yes, on that particular property, the insurance property, yes. This one?
Correct.
Yes,
That's what I'm referring
yes. So the commercial space is still rented. The insurance company is still operating in that building.
to. Right.
I said that the vacancy and the unsafe, conducive living and or working environments was for the second level.
Correct.
So that second level has A and B.
Yep.
The entirety of the building would be D and H. So D and H applies strictly just for the lower level separately, as well as applying to the second level as well. But for purpose D and H is smart growth, consistency of smart growth principles, and D here is just the faulty layout and design of the building. With that being said, like I said, the retaining walls, the utility lines, the lack of parking, that commercial space is only viable right there at that door, nothing else. So you have to come here and park on the street, and if you were to park in the lot next to you in some kind of shared agreement, again, you have that limited drive aisle. This has limitations from a layout standpoint.
So the
design.
substandard, you would say, is mostly based off the second floor, not the
Yeah,
first floor?
substandard condition, unwholesome living and working environment, second floor. Nothing to do with the first floor.
Right, so that's my exact question.
Yes.
The top unit is used for residential use, not commercial use.
Correct, it's a mixed-use structure.
So would it ever be like commercial on the first floor and commercial on the second floor?
That would have to go in front of your board. I don't
You
believe
would
your
require-
zoning ordinance allows for commercial over commercial.
Right, but the analysis is for commercial space, like if the area can be used for a commercial space, like that's what you're analyzing as part of this?
For this,
For like criteria A,
criteria A is the substandard building condition. If you see, has to be conducive to unwholesome living and working environments. So criteria A is only applied to that second floor.
right,
Yes.
okay.
You can't live in that condition, you can't work in that condition. That is relatively reasonable, just looking at the photos and walking the site.
Right.
Has nothing to do with that commercial portion downstairs.
Why would an owner leave an apartment empty for 15 years? I mean, it just defies logic. I mean, the rental, money you get in Belleville for rent, you leave something empty.
I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah.
Jimmy wanted to renovate it, but the cost, that was the
Now,
problem.
see, and thank you. That goes to exactly what everybody was just saying about the last conversation. Why wasn't the buildings redone? Why wasn't this? Becomes to cost. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Because he asked me if I wanted to do it. I said, no, thank you. I got enough in my own house.
And even then, there's still a faulty layout design pattern with that only access for residential being in that drive aisle. It's a faulty design. That's what the purpose of, we're gonna go here with the purpose D.
The white door doesn't go upstairs?
That does, it's in the driveway.
No, I'm talking about the white door.
No, from my circulation in that building, that's locked, boarded up, the stairs are busted out. We had to go in through the back.
Okay. Because originally that probably had a staircase going up there.
Yeah, I don't know what the renovation designs were when all that kind of started, but I had to go in through the side door. And it was alarming to me.
Any board members have anything else? I'll open it up to the public.
Yeah, Vinny, you're first. Oh, wait. We'll let Vinny go first.
All right.
Be very short, Vincent Frank Antoni.
You're still under oath.
I'm still under oath, but you don't have to be to question the witness.
Just in case.
Let the record show, yeah. Now, I'll be short because Mr. Venero brought up some of the things I got. The low-hanging wires, I don't know if they're, all the wires on Washington Avenue, we don't have them, we don't have poles on Washington Avenue. They're all in back of the homes on there. and to that. But the question is, are they legal? Is the height, is the clearance? Now, can trucks and cars park in there? Has there ever been a problem?
Those wires, you can't get a vehicle back there because of the size of the property. There's no way to reach the rear of that property with a vehicle. We're talking about the insurance, the one on the screen. You can't reach the rear of that property with a vehicle.
Right, but the question is, did you measure how high off the ground are the wires?
I did not, but I will tell you, they are low, literally, they're right in front of your face.
And the only other question I asked you, I don't know if you parked in the municipal lot today?
I don't know, I parked under the mural.
Do you realize that the entire winter Washington Avenue, everything goes downhill?
I do.
Including our municipal lot. So it don't appear to be a problem, that steep slope, we drive and all that. My property, to just the building on my property is 9 feet lower than the front of the building, and it's not the entire length of it. So I don't think that's a problem. Well, it appears that it's a done deal anyway. I'll save my comments for later.
Well, this is it. This is it, Mr. Franchantino.
Oh, you can say it now.
Yeah, say it now, we're gonna get it over with.
Well, like I said earlier, it is so obvious that this is all one big clubhouse for the developer. You're being used for the developer to have this area designated area needed redevelopment. So, and like I said, and you see what's going to happen from the telephone company to the new doctor's office, that's going to be this giant, ugly high-rise and all. And you people, your names, history will show you're the guys that created the slums. My wife's aunt moved into the beautiful, beautiful Columbus homes in Newark. And my first girlfriend lived in the Archbishop Waltz Apartments, beautiful, on McCarter Highway and Grafton Avenue. Lovely with an atrium in front with nice benches and all that. Neither one of them lasted 40 years. I walked my kids up 5:30 one morning to take them down there to watch them being imploded. And I can give you a whole mess of them across the country. All this high-rise stuff doesn't last. Okay, they're eyesores. People don't want to live. They're just an article in the paper. People are fleeing the cities. Most people want more development. They use these things as a step, and rental apartments don't stay in good condition laws because tenants move in there, they get married, they want to, with kids, they want to move out. But what happens by our own codes, every time you rent, you have to have it freshly painted. So you go 15, 20 years, you got about 18 low coats of paint on these places, and they're ugly rental units, which eventually turn to Section 8 housing or low-income housing. So you're the ones that are doing it. This is so obvious that the developers, you're doing this for the developers. And like I said earlier, the other statement, if they want to renovate the place and all, and I know the late Mr. Cosarelli, there's a reason why he didn't fix upstairs. He's deceased now, I won't say the reason why. But that's a beautiful, it's historic in nature because parts of The Sopranos film were there. We could use this. In fact, just Monday, my wife and I like to take weekend trips. We just found one, we're going to Hudson, New York. It's an old town, and the reason we're going there, look at the pictures. All the old original buildings, some 180 years old. And I love architecture, we're going up there. But not in Belleville, the hell with history, knock down that crap, because the developer wants to. So, enjoy the coffee he's provided for you guys.
I just wanted to drink my coffee here. Anybody got it? Definitely. Some coffee. Mr. Droz.
You know who I am, so let's get that portion. Going back up, a question about...
Wait.
Okay, Mario Droz, 95 Bell Street.
We gotta get sworn in too.
Just a question about...
I'm going to swear you in for this case. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the
That's
truth?
the truth, I'm not getting married, no. The question about the wires, are they on public right away, or is it on the street or private property?
The wires travel.
That they were talking about.
Yeah, they're on the screen behind me. Those wires travel through private property.
Are they, okay, they're on private property.
Well, they think they originate from a pole, and they travel.
But I'm saying, but they're not on the public right of way of the street, they don't cross the street by any chance? I'll tell you why for that.
Let me take a look at
take a look.
some of these other. I think they're coming from Valley Street, and I think they're.
As long as they don't, well, just
I
so you
think
know.
they're, I think it's located in the public right of way, that pole.
Yeah, if they're not crossing a road because it's, according to the Board of Public Utilities, any wires that cross a public roadway, including Comcast or anything, they have to be from curb to curb 14 feet. Private does not apply to private property. So you can be low, so that's at your own risk.
Yeah.
The reason I know that, because I was in the trucking business for 30 years, I took my share of wires down, so I do know, believe me, and I have appealed it and fought that. All right, I already mentioned before, I feel it shouldn't be here, it should be an area of rehabilitation coming in front of the board, I already said that. And just one thing about Jimmy Cosarelli, one thing Jimmy used to tell all of us, and I love Jimmy, I mean, he was a great guy. He always told us, when your lights go out, mine go on. That was his famous quote to us, I had to tell you that. But one thing about Jimmy, when my years on the council, he was on the Rehabilitation Committee for Washington Avenue. He loved Washington Avenue. And that's one thing he wanted to complete before he passed away. He wanted to see all, his intention and his vision for town was a business district with stores where people could shop and dine and not go out of town. That was what Jimmy wanted all the time, strictly business. His two first projects were right across the street on the two corners. He had the theme that everything should be like that, but not any kind of plastics and things like that. But that was the theme that started, but then, like I said, I was out of office and nothing ever continued on at that time. But that was his intention, to make the whole avenue look like that, all uniform, like a small town look. So,
If we could only do Washington Avenue like you did the library.
yeah, but Jimmy, right, look what he did to the library. Incredible what he did. I mean, if he was still around, he did have the vision in it
But he didn't
for the
do
town.
anything in his apartment.
And he was great, Jimmy. We all loved him. I gotta tell you that. Okay.
Okay.
I'm just a little confused. I think there's maybe two buildings. I may have missed something. I noticed on your pages here, you have, page 2, you have 130 years and 125 years. Which one is right? On page 2.
On page 2 here.
Yeah, look on the bottom. I'm just a little lost there. You have 2 years.
So the funeral home is over 130 years old, and the small detached dwelling is
Is
100.
that the garage you're talking about?
No, the small detached dwelling, let me go
You
to
don't have to show it to me. I'm fine, believe me.
It's right here, you see it in the foreground with the solar panels on it. This is the dwelling, this is in the study area, this is the funeral home, and then there's that white building there.
Oh, yeah, oh, okay, I see. Because I see 2 dates here, so I was just getting a little confused here. Then also I looked at the page number 19, which was a 105-year-old building. I'm seeing 3 different numbers here.
Because there's 3 different properties, so I listed the age of the different properties.
Everything was piecemeal.
Yeah, I'm describing what's out there.
Oh, okay, that's where I'm getting a little lost. And it says here that the second one's been vacant for 15 years, which I don't know if that's true. And what caught my eye here was, it says the renovation updates $100,000 to remain competitive. $100,000, it'll cost you $100,000 today to renovate your house, never mind that building. So if it's $100,000, $100,000 is relatively cheap then, if you're looking at it. Because put an addition on your house, like the guy was here before, probably gonna cost him $100,000, even more to put an addition on his house. So to me, the $100,000 is cheap.
Oh, that's just for the apartment?
No, I know
That's just
that.
for one segment
No,
of
I
it?
know what you're saying,
$100,000 for an apartment.
but that's cheap though. It's a beautiful building, like I said, I don't think anybody, like I said, the developer owns the property, he buys the property, he can do what he wants, but I still disagree that he should be here getting a recommendation. He can do what he wants if he comes in front of the board the way he used to be. But, because I looked at Jersey City, I'm going to just give you some examples, I just have to tell you. There's a pencil factory there, built in 1860. They didn't knock it down, it was renovated. Soho, right here in Belleville, 1905, it's being renovated, it wasn't knocked down. All of these properties could have been designated an area of redevelopment. Dutch Reformed Church, 1697, is still standing. The Beacon in Jersey City Medical Center, 1882, they didn't knock it down.
Mario, no
No, no.
We don't value the historic value
No,
here.
I know it's-
I mean, there's a lot of buildings that are historic.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying,
At this point, it isn't disrepair. At this point, something has to be done.
no, we understand that, but I agree with you, it has to be done, but,
None of these buildings
but-
aren't even registered as historic, which
Exactly.
makes it even
That
worse.
makes it,
So-
yes.
Makes it sad
We
because
have no registered buildings for
Shame on us.
historic.
So
Yes.
shame on us for
I
that part,
remember.
so.
Well, I think that's your next step then.
Tony, you were on the same committee, am I
some of
not
those-
correct? We were going to designate.
Yeah, that's
Never
what shame
went
on
to
everybody.
just-
Why weren't those areas, the buildings that we had designated historic preservation, and then 4 members refused to come to me, so we couldn't get a quorum? You were one of the members that refused to show up. You were the chairman, and I had to take
Wait a minute, I got the
over,
floor.
and we couldn't get it done. All right, we had the reservoir, we had
Wait,
the...
can I finish up? I have the floor, I'm just winding it up now.
Wind up.
Okay, again, you know my position against redevelopment versus rehabilitation, okay? 170 Washington Avenue next door was a shell. Should have been, it was not rehabilitated, it just rebuilt. 314, across from 314 Washington Avenue, the old Walgreens. That should have been an area of redevelopment, they didn't get it. Across, that's the old Walgreens. Franklin Avenue, the new Ethos by the Nutley line. They didn't get it, they didn't get it. Washington Avenue Phone Factory didn't get it. The $2 stores didn't get it. Branchwood Manor didn't get it, that needed it. The Main Street State Fair didn't get it. The old Kmart didn't get it. Walter Kitty is a best example. Contaminated property. Area rehabilitation.
But there
That's
was
the point I'm bringing
somebody
out.
else- But someone was knocking on the door to do that rehabilitation.
These are all recent
No
ones.
one's knocking right now.
It was a
So, what,
This
we
is
should
a
even,
horrible time to build.
administration.
what I'm saying here, Mr. Graziano's on the council, this shouldn't be here.
Success.
This shouldn't be here. We shouldn't be designating it an AINOR, whatever they call the property.
We are in the town paid for our planner.
Yeah, so he's here, that's why I'm saying it to him. But we shouldn't be here. We should not be here. Just don't
Right.
do
You shouldn't
things
be
the
here.
way they were
It's
done.
9 o'clock already.
Yes.
What's that?
I say, right, you shouldn't be here, it's 9 o'clock already.
I know, I want to go too, believe me. That's why I said I was wrapping it up quickly.
It's good, Mayor,
Okay.
thank you.
Mr. Cosarelli.
Frank J. Cosarelli. I am the executor of the estate of James Cosarelli. We wholeheartedly support the findings that were made by Mr. Dougherty. We'd ask the board to give the recommendation to the council to consider what the appropriate overlay zoning is for the property. My dear cousin James, who everybody's spoken very fondly of because of his dedication to the community, treasured the building. I'm not going to say that he did anything but have pride of ownership and dedication to maintaining what was there. Unfortunately, his pocketbook was not deep enough to maintain a structure of that nature, and since his passing 18 months ago, we've struggled putting our own money into maintaining the building and paying the taxes and trying to be good citizens. And we've tried to market it to funeral home users with the objective of not selling the business per se, but letting an established funeral business come in and use it. And what Mr. Dougherty's citing to is that most funeral operators today look at this structure and they say, it's lovely, but I can't use it. The facilities are antiquated for the practice of the profession. I won't go into details. And as lovely as James made it, he put a large amount of money into the decoration of the property 40 years ago. And as we all know, decorations tend to be cyclical, and they tend to come and go. So it's got an outdated look to it. And if I was to sell it for another use at this point in time, it would have to be adaptively reused to that other use. Now, certain structures lend themselves to that. For example, perhaps this could be an office building. But I know for certain, given the interior layout of the building, given when it was built, it cannot be adaptively reused without gutting it. And once I gut it, I am down to the cost of tearing it down as being the best financial option, which is certainly, it's not something I wanted to do. I've considered it as the executive of the estate. We've tried to do everything we could to maintain the property in its condition, but it's an impossibility. We've gone so far as to hire a funeral director to continue to practice there, albeit once a month, possibly, maybe once every 3 months. So I'm at a point where we support anything that will assist us with being able to market the property in a way that will make it something that's good for the town, produce revenue for the town, and is consistent with the uses that seem to be developing along Washington Avenue. This building doesn't fit in anymore. So as much as I love it, and as much as I love my cousin's memory, and I loved him, he would support this. Many of you don't know, we tried to sell it often. I think Ray Sabanko probably does know that, because Ray's one of our tenants, so he's in one of the garages we have there. So we know what the difficulties are with developing on Washington Avenue. This is an ideal solution for us. I spoke to Tommy Grolleman. He supports this as well. He owns a little house in the back. And we're going to try and do what we can to make it something that the town could be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you.
I promised 2 very quick questions and then 2 very quick comments, but I guess I'll multi-purpose here, so I have to swear.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Michael Shelton, 47 Floyd Street. First question, Mr. Dougherty, in your study, there's a long appendix at the very end, Appendix F, which is this beautiful series of photos of massive parking garage structures.
Yes.
And I didn't quite understand the relevance of that to the AINOR study. Could you just quickly explain why you have, these are, I'm sure you've looked, you've seen that some of these parking garages look like they're 10 or more stories. So is there some contemplation of putting a huge parking garage like
Well,
that on this site?
the exercise for that was to again, what I try to articulate here is, from talking with the owners, every single option that we could have thought of, we looked at, and one of them was to make it a viable site, the faulty layout, that whole design, that limited circulation. They looked at potential a parking deck to allow for better circulation and to accommodate what would potentially maybe a mixed use or commercial for tenants and residents. So on page 60 of that, what I want you to look at on page 60 is the red area for New York, and they're kind of showing you what the cost is per space. And that was the whole point of putting that study in there, was how expensive one space is in a parking lot.
Thank you. I thank you for that clarification. The next question I have for you, Mr. Dougherty, 163 Valley, the little single-family home. Mr. Cosarelli just mentioned the name of the owner. He's actually very well known. Everyone here who's a Belleville resident knows who lives there. It's Thomas Grolleman.
Yep.
But you said that the reason his property is being included in this AINOR study is not because it's dilapidated or obsolete. It's because it's adjacent to the other principal properties as part of the study. So the question to you is there any specific criteria of when a property like this can be included? Because it seems very nebulous. It seems like you're just saying because this little property is needed for a more global project, the law allows you to include this in the overall consideration. But does a property like this have to be immediately adjacent to the other properties? Because if it isn't, if there's no such requirement, can't you then say, well, maybe the properties across the street or down the road or a quarter mile away could also be part of a more expansive thing. So I just wanted to know, is there any specific requirements for a
So-
perfectly good property to be included in an AINOR study.
So, yeah, it has to be in the redevelopment area of designation. I didn't determine that was the area of designation, right? So, as long as it's in the study area, if it's a perfectly great property, it can possibly lend itself to criteria 3 to effectuate whatever that plan is. Unfortunately, I don't have that plan I'll use a real brief example. With the whole street, maybe the whole street's in there because in that study area, they're going to do something with shade trees and street trees and bike lanes or whatever the case is, or an open park here or easements here or that kind of thing. Doesn't necessarily mean the structure needs to leave, but they're saying in this particular case, when they, I guess, delineated this area, they determined that that piece was vital for substantial reasons to square off that weird irregular shape of the funeral home lot and the grading and so
I
forth.
understand why you're doing it, but I guess the question is, what does it mean, according to the law, to be in the area? Does it have to be immediately adjacent, or is the law written in such a nebulous way that you could easily extend what you consider to be in the area to be properties 2 doors down, 3 doors down, or on the other side of a township? I just wanted to know if there is any specific mathematical geography criteria that says that to include a property like this 163, it has to be touching the other subject properties.
So what I try to say is that opening statement here that you see on the screen behind me, if it's in the designated area. I didn't designate this area to be studied. Someone else did that, and I studied the area. As long as it's in the study area, it could lend itself to the bulk underline.
Well, I wish the lawyers and government officials who write these sort of things could have been a little bit more specific of what they mean by in the area.
It's weird, this one's so direct, half the laws are so, you don't know what they're saying half the
All right.
time.
Well, those are my 2 questions. Thank you for those answers. Now my 2 quick comments. As I said, everyone here knows that the owner of 163 Valley is Thomas Grolleman. And I'm sure most of you know that Mr. Grolleman right now and myself were both defendants in a matter that involves, I have the opportunity to come, because this does have a bearing. We're involved in a piece of litigation involving the mayor. Now, Ms. Guamant is the mayor's designee in planning board. If the mayor was here tonight, he could possibly be construed as conflicted because he's going to be willing. But the municipal land use law is absolutely clear. If the mayor is conflicted in a matter, so is the mayor's Class 1 representative. You can't push that aside. I've had this argument over the years, and I can give you the actual. Mr. Marinello, I'm sure, could probably quote it from memory because he's the expert in municipal land use law. But the MLUL says specifically that if the mayor is conflicted in a matter, so is the Class 1 representative, his or her designee. So I'm saying here for the record, you may beg to differ, but I wanted to go on record that I believe that Ms. Guamant is conflicted in this matter because Mellon has an intrinsic conflict in this one property that's involved with this AINOR study. Right? The other situation, Mr. Graziolo just left. When the council adopted the ordinance in September to recommend to you to do this AINOR study, in that ordinance, resolution, the developer was named, and it was Premier Developers, Peter Teflinski, the same developer that is now finishing the construction of this gross 158-unit mixed-use project just south of the town hall, which Mr. Frantantoni likes to call the human cages. Now, Mr. Teflinski, the owner of Premier Developers, less than 1 year ago, when we were in the midst of the municipal election, Mr. Teflinski had a VIP fundraiser, a soiree, $1,000 a ticket, and according to ELEC reports, that event raised at least $30,000 and probably close to $40,000 for the Mellon ticket, which Mr. Graziano was a member and beneficiary. So, less than 1 year ago, the developer who was going to benefit from this AINOR declaration provided Team Mellon with its lion's share of campaign funding. I'm also arguing tonight, asserting that Mr. Graziano has a conflict here because he previously benefited less than 1 year ago. And according to the ethics laws, the clock starts upon starting the second term. So in that respect, Mr. Graziano starts to have to worry about potential ethics violations in a matter like this starting last July 1st, not from the moment that the fundraiser took place at the end of February of last year. So I want to go on record here tonight saying that for the previously mentioned reasons, Ms. Guaman should recuse herself, should abstain from this vote, and Mr. Graziano should also abstain for 2 different reasons. And with that said, I wish you all a good night. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Having seen no hands, I close this portion. Thank you, Mr. Doherty.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion to recommend for what is approval?
I'd just like to say something before we vote, so we can get out of here. I just find it very funny that the first set of, the first one you went over, beat us up, left and right. Just so happens to be, the second one went very, very smooth. Any reason why?
Yeah, because we know you're already going to vote for it.
Or is it that you know the players?
Yeah,
and
we
you don't
know
want to
you.
say
We
nothing?
know you.
I'm just telling you. No.
We know you.
Know yourself.
I'm glad you.
You know the other ones.
I'm off the record, I can't take 2 people.
You know that.
I'm glad you brought
You
it
know
up.
that.
Please. Now, Mr. Graziano, you're done.
Okay, I'm gonna second
Okay.
that motion.
Could I just quickly have a
No,
response to Mr.
we're
Graziano?
closed.
I
We're
asked
taking a
for
motion
the
right
identity of
now.
the people in the first case, and I wasn't
I
getting it.
can't
We
take
have a
this down.
motion on the floor. We have a second. Please roll call.
Chairwoman Alvarado,
Yes.
Mr. Vanda,
Yes.
Mr. Graziano,
Yes.
Ms. Guaman. Yes. Ms. Nettleford,
No.
Mr. Venero,
Yes.
Mr. Guyan.
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're closed. See you all March 9th.
Thank you.